Um, So let's call this meeting of CPDC to order. My first question, are we televised? Is that?
Yes,
Okay.
so this is a hybrid CPDC setup. We're in person and allowing remote participation. And allowing remote participation. So a few guidelines for that style of meeting. First of all and foremost in staff tonight, we have myself, Community Development Director Andrew McNichol, and Senior Planner Mary Benedetto. We're also joined with Town Council Ethan Dively in the corner. And on the board tonight, we have all of our members that are present in the meeting in person tonight. Chair John Weston, Vice Chair Tony Diarezzo, Mark Wetzel, Hillary Mative, and Tom Armstrong. Heather Klisch could not make it tonight. So this is everybody, and the applicant team is a combination between in-person and remote. So for those of you that are here in person and remote, just please know that we're going to follow our standard operating procedure and that the board will open a hearing. The applicant will present their application to the board. The board will provide comment and question amongst themselves and then open up to public comment. For all public who has attended, please, when you are acknowledged, please introduce yourself, your name and address for the record. If you are in person, please just raise your hand and the chair will find you, I'm sure. If you're on the Zoom, please use the raise hand feature found under reactions, or if you have your camera on, simply raise your hand and wave around and we'll touch you. For those on Zoom, we will have to unmute you, so just let us know. You can chat us with any technical difficulties or direct questions that we can try to share, but we prefer not to use the chat if we can help it. Outside of that, this meeting is being broadcasted and recorded by RCTV on the local channels, and I think we're good to go.
Fantastic. All right. So let's see, the first item on our agenda, right, is the public hearing for 459 Main Street. Do you all want to start up?
Sure.
If I could, Tony, could you please read
sorry.
the notice? Yes.
It's my only job.
I'm sorry.
Notice is hereby given that under section 10.45.13 of the Reading zoning bylaw, the Community Planning and Development Commission, CPDC, will hold a public hearing on Monday, December 4th, 2023 at 7:30 p.m. in the Town Hall Conference Room at Reading Town Hall, 16 Lowell Street, Reading, Mass., and through the remote and online measures below, to consider the major plan changes a previously approved application under MGL Chapter 40R submitted by Cpdc Contracting Inc. for a property located at 459 Main Street, Assessors Map 17, Lot 62. A copy of the application and company plans are available to the public at Town Hall and on the town website the Thursday prior to the hearing.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, I don't know if it's appropriate to have like a summary of the history of the project before we get into the details of, because residents have called me, some of my neighbors seeing the stuff in the paper, and
I was hoping the applicant could start with a brief history of how we got here today, but I'm happy to jump in if needed.
Sure, I'm happy to. For the record, my name is Attorney Jesse Schumer. I represent the applicant, Cpdc Contracting. My client is in the room, and I believe we have some members of our team who are on the Zoom. I haven't seen the attendees list, Andrew, but you're pardon me. Giovanni Federa, he's our civil engineer of record. And I see the Johnson's neighbors for the property here. Thank you for coming tonight. Just a brief history of the project. As some of the members know, I see that there are some new faces on the CPDC since last we were before you. This project was presented, I believe, 5 or 6 meetings during 2021, 2022. The project was ultimately approved by the CPDC last autumn with the denial of a density waiver for the project, which reduced the effective unit count to, I believe, 5 units. The project, the applicant filed an appeal with the Massachusetts Land Court, and we have been engaged in settlement discussions with town council, and I believe that those were communicated through the CPDC via executive sessions with the board. And we're pleased that we are able to reach a settlement in principle that we're here tonight to discuss with all of you. with respect to a revised version of this project. Since we were last before you, the project has been revised, and our members of our team are available to present the plans and answer any questions that you may have about the revised plans. But the bullet points of the revised project are that it has been revised from 12 units to 10 residential units. All of the apartments, condominiums in this building will be 2-bedroom units. The building itself has been reduced from 4 stories to 3 stories, and the roof deck that was over on the top of the building has also been eliminated to create some additional privacy for the neighbors. The ground floor commercial space at the front and corner of the project building remains as it was previously proposed. We're anticipating this will be some sort of an office or retail use to be determined at this point. The parking garage for the project has changed fairly significantly since we were last before you, because a significant portion of the building that extended towards the rear yard, towards the Johnson property, has now been eliminated entirely. So there's a significantly increased setback as compared with what the board previously was presented. The revised project has a significant portion of open parking at the rear of the site. This also provides area for subsurface drainage to be under the parking lot rather than under the building itself. There's now 18 parking spaces, which is a mix of commercial spaces, guest spaces, and resident spaces, as well, including 2 handicap accessible ADA compliant spaces. That, I believe, is the significant bullet points. The majority of the rest of the project was not significantly changed since last year before you. There's still proposed to be EV-ready parking within the garage and on the surface, solar-ready rooftop, as well as a significant amount of bike parking to really promote the transit-oriented nature of this development. And we feel that the project is improved, and we appreciate the efforts of the board members and town council in working with to believe is an amicable resolution of this matter to bring an improvement to a perfect location, we believe, in Reading for this kind of development. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to the board for any questions of me, and if you'd like to have a presentation from members of my team, as I said, we're available for that.
Thank you. I think that was a good summary. I guess what I'm thinking is that it would be a good idea to have sort of a walkthrough of I think, right, the biggest impact that influences the external impacts are the size of the building, sort of those changes that you mentioned about the parking garage and that sort of thing. So maybe we can spend some time from someone going over that so we get a sense of what those changes were.
Sure.
And then go from there.
Giuseppe, is one of these gentlemen the architect?
Eric is
Is he on?
he should be on Zoom, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Eric.
I'll apologize. I haven't actually met the new architect in person. It's only been
Sure.
via email communication.
It's the world we live in now.
Exactly.
Thank you. Yes, I am Eric Zackerson, the architect, the new architect. I work with Context out of Charlestown. Having not been to these meetings before, how would you like me to start? What would be the I'm trying to figure out how to talk about changes, and this is the only design that I've worked on at this point.
So Eric, if you could maybe just run through the new building design, and as we go through the plans, we can sort of go back and forth and flag for the benefit of the members and members of the public what's changed.
Yeah,
just if you can see here, the current building here, this is the presentation on Main Street there. You'll see that it's 3 stories now. There was previously a 4-story plus a roof deck on the top. However, the general concept of the building is not significantly changed, as you see. There's still the garage door towards plan left there, and the entrance to the commercial space to the right of that. So as that as a starting point, Eric, you want to go ahead and just present the elevation of the building?
Absolutely. So we understood and also agreed that the previous design was was well articulated, had a lot of elements that people appreciated from the neighborhood and from classic kind of corner buildings on more prominent lots, and we wanted to design something that was very similar to that and similar and had that a lot of that same mentality. So so what you see here, this is the elevation on Main Street, and you'll see that on both the prominent streets, is a brick base with a clapboard siding up above, very highly articulated windows with a number of buttons, and then a coping piece at the top that kind of caps everything. And then we spend a lot of our energy right at the corner of the intersection, bringing the brick up through the what is kind of angled, and you see the darker portion here is the masonry. Really wanted to celebrate that and direct people's eye right to the intersection. Along the bottom here, you see the kind of parking entrance, the residential lobby, and the commercial space at the bottom. Might be helpful to go back to the plans to kind of reiterate, go back to the ground floor plan, which is a couple of pages above this, just to kind of reiterate that functionally the ground floor is not going to be significantly different from what people have seen before. So Main Street is on the left side of this drawing. The parking entrance comes off of that. It'd be one way entered off of Main Street. They would tuck under the back of the building. A number of the spaces are under the back of the building, and then a portion on the right is surface spaces. As you said, there are 18 parking spaces, and as they scroll, if you scroll down a little bit, as they scroll down to Washington Street, you see a couple of handicap spaces directly adjacent to the kind of entrance to the lobby. The lobby is a straight shot through because the number of people would probably come in off of out of their cars and we want them to have the same entrance as people who come in off of the sidewalk. And then right at the nose of the building, right at the corner, we maintain a 1,300 square foot. I mean, ideally, it'd be a restaurant setting, and we really want to be able to have something that engages with the intersection and creates an active, lively space right on the corner. You can see that angled portion there in the bottom left is the zone that we and the previous architect also really wanted to celebrate and draw people's attention to. So now if we go back to the elevations, I think that
Eric,
corner
if I
makes
could
more
stop you
sense.
for just 1 second, so sorry to interrupt. Before you go to the elevations, can you go back to the garage floor plan there that you were just on? And just could you highlight for the benefit of the CPDC members where the rear building line is? And I've got a version of the old plans I can show you for comparison purposes.
Well, I can't. Yeah, exactly. That is the line of the building above there dashed in. On this lower floor, the lines of the ground floor are pulled in away from their parking. But up above, you see that dashed line that kind of continues across and then hangs out over a couple of the parking spaces at the very top of the building, very top of the drawing. The idea was to create to make the building tight, as compact as possible in order to provide the 10 units, 5 units per floor, and also to make it structurally very feasible to build. And so we pulled it in. So there's a short overhang over those 4 spaces that you see right in the middle of the page here. And then this 6 spaces across the top of the page are also under the building, whereas the rest of the drive aisle on the right and the parking spaces on the right those would be open to the sky above. Yeah, exactly. That zone would be open to sky above.
Yes, and just thank you, Eric. And just for comparison, I'll just show the CPDC members. This is, sorry for the smaller version, not quite as big as on the big screen. This is the previous version of the plan. As you can see, the building previously came all the way out to that rear row of parking spaces all the way back there. So it's a significant reduction in addition to the height, but also the depth of the building.
Is there an access from this parking area into the retailer entrance? I know there's a foyer.
No.
But I assumed that was to the apartments or condos.
So there's a flexibility to have that. If you move the cursor up just a little bit, right behind the elevator door, no, on the other side of the elevator, we had left a door there, potentially thinking that some of the parking spaces opposite this would be used for the retailer, have the capacity to be, and or depending on the layout of that space, that could be loading if it's determined that there isn't parking or whatever. So the idea is there's that point. We could introduce another point to come from the parking. But the reality is the retail door is just outside the garage parking door. Yeah, right there. And so right now, there's a little bit of a flexibility until that retail client is able to be identified and their layout worked through.
Where would the garbage dumpsters and or cans be stored?
So there, yeah, exactly. Upper right there, where we can't put any parking or we couldn't really access it. We're envisioning a high privacy fence around a dumpster area.
Previously, the garbage was in the building itself, so with this design, I think it's contemplated that we'll make arrangements, obviously, for private garbage and recycling collection. But the open nature of the rear of the site really opens up your options to get the garbage truck onto the site itself, or rolling out the garbage containers to the driveway there, because it is intended to be one way going the other direction. I think it's something to be managed with the building management. If it's off hours, potentially the ability for the garbage truck to actually go in on the site to minimize disturbance on Washington Street. So Eric, do you want to go ahead and show the new elevation of the building?
Sure, let's go back to the elevations. Maybe we'll come back to the units, but they're pretty straightforward. So this is the lower drawing here is looking diagonally at that primary entrance, and you see how it it has a very symmetrical about the center a point that fans out into the kind of, I guess, secondary facades, which are the clapboard over the masonry base. And the idea is, yeah, is to make sure that front entrance, the retail, feels very prominent and welcoming. Could we zoom out just a little bit? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and so you can, again, you can see the garage door on the left, the retail door adjacent to that, the plate glass or the large glass windows, and then on the right side the kind of the quieter lobby door, and then and the parking to the right would be to the right of the whole building. The exit of the parking would be to the right of the building here. Next slide.
Andrew, do you actually have the colorized versions of these?
I think it's the next page after this.
Yeah, I think this is the only color.
And that's, yeah, exactly. That's as far as we got in coloring it. But if you scroll up a little bit, you get an idea of what the colors and materials mean. But yeah, trying to have that brick facade, that brick color and material really central, and then span out as the base of the other two pieces to really make that center highly detailed piece feel really special. So getting back to the elevations, this is the Washington Street elevation. You see how it shows the right side of this a little confusing because it says open to parking and it looks like it overhangs, and it does, but that overhang is quite far back, almost 60 feet, I think, back from there. That's only over that for that one unit back there. You actually would kind of see this elevation be just a narrow piece, narrow 2/3 of left side of the drawing. And then the bottom drawing here is looking back at the building from what would be the right side of the plans that we were looking at a minute ago. So you see all the way through the parking area to the garage door. You see it on the left, you see the door that leads into the residential lobby. Up above that, you see 3 decks that kind of hang out over the drive aisle, giving them some outdoor space, and also just kind of a little bit private because it's not in the public way, those 3 spaces. Next slide. And then this is the facing our directly adjacent neighbor, and you see how it is. It has open parking on the lower left, the masonry or a form of masonry kind of wrapping the back. Minimal windows for a few of the bedrooms on this facade, and then what you see in the top is further pushed back beyond. And on the left side, you see that privacy fence that would be around the trash area. Next slide. And then the colored elevations. And then let's go back just for completeness. Let's go back to the unit plans just a little bit. Yeah, the two levels of units are very similar. We're showing about 1,000 square foot units. One of them's a little over that. They're all 2-bed, 2-bath units meant to be kind of a primary suite and a second bedroom. Those 3 units on the right side, each with a deck over the parking area. The units on the left side with a little bit different decks. The one on the upper left, an inset deck off of Main Street. The one on the lower left, almost decorative, 2 almost decorative decks, kind of quite small. I think they could be a nice extension of the second bedroom and of the kitchen, but they also having 2 of them, I think, makes that unit quite unique and that prominent living space for the people who, like me, are just love being in an urban environment and feeling the movement of the city. So that's basically it. Then we've got a roof here, which is just condensers and stairs, elevator machine, and shaft. I think that's the bulk of it. I have some sections for answering questions, and then the engineering drawing below that survey.
Just comparing this image that we got here, this is the previous design. As you can see, it was quite a bit more ornamented. It's had the kind of greenish color top level and the details on the windows, and the blue color and the kind of tan. So the design has been, I would say, modernized a little bit. I think not everybody was in love with the more ornamental style that the previous architect had designed. This has been simplified and kind of designed to be a little bit more consistent with the look and feel of the Rise building next door. So that's the general sense that the design went, and you can see here that the 4th and top story, as well as the roof deck, has been eliminated from the current design.
Another question with regard to the garage door that's on Main Street, is that a high speed? How are we going to avoid backup of vehicles backing into Main Street, waiting for the door to rise?
So I think the detail of the door hasn't really been finalized yet, but I think it is anticipated that it would be one of those high speed where the vehicle comes in and it goes up in a matter of 1 or 2 seconds or something like that.
I believe the door's also set back a little bit.
Yeah.
For a car to pull in and have enough space, open and get into the garage.
I think either setting it back or high speed is good.
We were on massing. Jesse, did you want to talk about the shadows for a minute?
So the updated plan set does have a new shadow impact study. Yep, this is it here. As with all buildings, this building will have somewhat of a shadow impact. However, the reduction of the 4th story significantly lessens that, particularly for the properties on the rear, including the Johnson property. What view is this, Andrew?
That was the summer solstice.
This is summer. Yeah, this is summer. So this is the least shadow impactful. If you want to go to winter solstice, that would be the greatest shadow impact, just due to the time of year and the angle of the sun just really creates shadows everywhere, no matter what side building you have. So yeah, as you can see there, the 12 o'clock noon, you're basically right above, there's some shadow impact towards the main street in the morning, and there's a shadow impact not towards the Johnson property, but actually the property behind them there. But you know, this is the worst case condition, and as you can see from the shadow study there, the Rise building has a significant shadow impact in its existing condition, so this will not materially add to that.
Questions from the board or anything specific that the board wants to further review? Items that we've gone over?
All right, I'll start. Simple one. I assume the heat will be via heat pumps. There's not gas for the building?
It's, I believe, is that correct? Does that mean heat pumps?
Heat pumps.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I had some comments mostly on the site plan. You want to talk about those?
Sure.
Well, and I wasn't involved in the previous approval, so I don't know how much of this stuff got discussed, but I looked at the town engineer's view comments from April 6, 2022. I don't know whether those have all been addressed.
Don't know if we've gotten responses to everything at this time.
For instance, one says test pits shall be performed to confirm soil conditions and recharge rates, which is, I think, pretty important because we have a fairly complex infiltration system. It says fire flow tests shall be performed. I don't believe there's going to be any issues with that, but I don't know if that was done. Sewer flow study shall be performed. And I saw that it's marked on the site plan, applicant shall make improvements to the opposite handicap ramp on Washington Street. It shows some new granite curving and ramp there, but it wasn't really detailed very well. And I don't know what Chase Bank is responsible for at that point either.
Yeah, we're coordinating with all those entities.
And what was the other? They made some comments about the traffic, or they made a statement about traffic impact assessment, but they didn't really say anything. And then looking at the site plan, at the crosswalk, there's 2 steel bollards. Can we do something a little more ornamental there? You know, I know out here we have 3 pillars, which probably aren't ideal, but I know you can get some decorative bollards instead of just putting a painted steel pipe in the ground.
Sorry, did you say that was crossing Main or Washington?
That's right on the corner. So the ramp is on the corner facing Main and Washington, so it's a corner ramp. They have steel bollards, and the detail just shows a directed post. There's also existing condition, I didn't see how that was addressed, of the standard for the traffic lights is right on that corner, and I don't know where that is, or you know, how that would be relocated or adjusted on the site. But I know the new ones that they put in recently, base is probably a good 30-inch diameter for a light that big, and so that would take up a fair amount of the sidewalk. So I don't know what the plan was for that.
I don't recall the discussion about that, so I'd have to.
And let's see, what else do they have? The inspection port for the infiltration system didn't really show that it was designed for traffic. So I know those come with some sort of a plastic cover, but it needs to be traffic rated. For the infiltration system, they have a 6-inch inspection port with an access manhole. And then I did have some comments on the construction management plan. I don't know if you want me to just give those to you or go through them. They're just kind of general comments about some additions and things.
You can go through them.
Yeah, and I'm just making a comment that I hadn't seen any traffic management plan, so I don't know whether there is traffic management related to the construction. I know it's somewhat included in here. I added a section called project schedule. Contractor shall submit a detailed Gantt chart prior to construction and update as required during construction. So I know we have a number of projects in town that kind of go on and on and on.
Schedule, I can only, yeah.
Like Woburn Street gas installation. Concrete washout, I added designated washout locations shall be approved by the town. Under section 5.5 truck access for primary entry routes, I revised that, said construction deliveries coming from the north, take Route 28 south, then take a left onto the project site. I don't think we want lefts taken onto the project site. So I said, all entries for construction shall be from the south on Route 28 north.
So, right, we received a letter from the chief of police saying that's all his domain. So I would recommend that we don't even include anything in our decision unless, if he takes that position on other projects, he's more than welcome to come to these meetings and discuss with the public about how traffic is going to be managed, because I'm not gonna, right? So, but in this case, if he wants it, he can have it, right? So I think we take all of that out of our decision.
Yeah, whatever construction management language we have, we should reword to, the applicant will meet the requirements of staff departments to the best extent necessary, that we can do that in our decision. Most certainly, if the applicant is willing and our staff is willing, I'd love that document, Mark, just so we can pour through it and work with the applicant and our staff on the language when we come forward, if at all, for permitting, when we get there, and then we can review it all then and come to some agreements with them.
I had a comment under signage, all traffic related signage shall conform to any TCD, Mass DOT and Town of Reading standard, but I guess that's something the police chief to deal with.
Yeah, they had submitted a letter about it 4:30 today, just asking that all construction traffic control remain with them, their discretion.
And there was mention, and I don't know whether this was included and I didn't get it, a logistics construction map. This is under 5.8. The logistics construction map has designated ample parking during construction. What has been prepared or submitted
Would be prior to construction.
And I added to 5.12 noise and adjoining properties. I added sanitary facilities or portable toilets.
All good comments.
So, all good comments. I do think, right, the two pieces that really impact the site plan are those, I'm gonna say that the layout of those, of any bollards and the mast for the traffic signal, right? So we need to maintain, or, it needs to be maintained that there's ADA clearance along that sidewalk, right? Like so that could change the site plan if that wasn't accounted for appropriately, right? And I guess that's the piece that I heard that we probably need to sort of think through or figure out a way to work that through.
And I had a question on the cement fiber siding. Is that just like a clapboard with, and is it pre-colored?
Pre-colored or it could be painted. Mostly a hardy board, so it would be some kind of a hardy board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I had.
I think at one point we were asking for signage, indications on the elevation. That's something that would be submitted with this.
So at this time, I don't think we've gotten any reference to signage. It's all to be coordinated later with any future tenants and property management, so that's just where it's at right now.
So I think the concern that would come up is that, right, I don't see any obvious place for signage. And, right, you don't want, right, you have a beautiful building that's planned here and you don't want the signage to look like it was an afterthought. And so, right, we're not asking for details of signage, obviously you can't, right, you can't know that now. But the size, the location, the lighting, so that it's planned with the building, with the facade of the building, not, not sort of shoehorned in there afterwards.
Right, especially with the like retail kind of tucked under, so
Yeah,
it's kind of a strategy.
Agreed. I don't know if the architect maybe knows the anticipated width of some of these brick bandings up here. That helps add to, I should ask him to unmute.
Could we submit it when we put together a sample board? We'll give you the size and the material of the signage. Does that work?
yeah,
We put a sample board together
Yeah.
for the exterior,
that would work, yeah,
and you can review it, approve it at that point.
yeah. Right, and I think now is the time is if once you do that, if your architect says, oh, this band needs to be a little bit smaller or a little bit this way or tweaked a little bit, right? Like, right, that's the point is we wanna think that through before you build it and then be like, oh, it doesn't look great.
Yeah, by then we'll have pretty much everything figured out anyways, as far as all the exterior materials, sizes.
Just to continue a couple thoughts I made before. Obviously, something with regard to the garage door, fast speed, setback, whatever, so there's no backup on Main Street. I looked at, it's A10 on the diagram, and I see the side door to the retail in the entrance. But I noticed aside from, I think you need at least another door, because I only see one other front door on Main Street. You need fire exit, you need a path to get to the dumpsters or garbage cans and something like that. I just think it's prudent. I noted if you do put it in the entrance to it, both doors are in the same area, general area, and I don't know what the fire department, fire marshal would say about that. And I leave that up to staff to figure it out, but I think you need more than one door in the retail operation, particularly if you're gonna have some parking out the back.
Technically, they have 2 additional doors.
I've only got certain diagrams that I copied. You on A10, Tony?
No, I couldn't even tell you which one I'm on. But there is one in the back behind the elevator.
Yeah, I've got that. Yeah.
And then there's one out to the patio area, on Main Street to the front, if you look.
Yeah,
See,
because
it's
one,
double
yeah,
doors.
that's, yeah, but I think the discussion was there that they're talking about another one could be put in, and one of the ones they're talking about being put in is in, yes, right by the elevator. But I think they clearly need a second to the retail somewhere, and, you know, I just leave it up to staff to figure out where, the fire department, and things like that. With regard to landscaping, any idea, a lot of it is going to be, we'll call it containers. Is there a useful life on those containers or anything like that?
So there's details that are provided in the architectural sheets, and the architect can go through them, but they're metal planters. They have a weathered look that they acquire over time as they're out in the elements.
Do you have a useful life expectation?
That I'll have to turn that question over to Eric to see if he knows, but the idea is that those will be, all the plantings will be containerized, and they'll be selected in consultation with the town staff to be native plantings and durable perennial plantings, to be replaced if they don't survive a particularly harsh winter.
Yeah, and I would agree with all that, leave that up to staff. I note that I just happen to like trees. On the exit that is right turn only, exit that exit, I noted to the right of that on A10, there could be a place for a tree. In other words, giving something a taller structure. I noted the planters on the Washington Street too are much larger, and there could be kind of a dwarf tree that would not grow very high in 25 years. I just make that as an observation, and I'll leave that up to staff.
It does, as you were talking, they brought the plan up for the planters. They're
Right.
16 gauge core 10 steel, so I think they're.
Okay,
That's a-
you're the engineer.
That's about,
You're the
yeah,
engineer.
that's about as BD as you can get, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Another question I had was emergency ingress and egress out of the building. It's, you know, it's quite close to the next door neighbor.
Mhm.
And if there was like a requirement for fire lane or any of those type of issues, that's I think the biggest.
We didn't get any specific requirements. The fire department noted that they have no comments at this time, but when the official code plan set is submitted for permitting, they would likely have many comments then at this time. It all seems in concept good to move forward from their end in buildings.
Comments before we open it up?
Maybe just to quickly jump back to landscaping, I think in previous board hearings, there was a comment from one member about additional plantings along this portion of the facade, if possible. Might enter into some of our sidewalk space, but we'd love to still entertain that with the applicant under condition in future discussions if possible, and if all agree.
Yeah, I think that's agreeable. That location on the building, that's the, I believe the utility room, so we didn't want to put a window on the building. But we're certainly open to some kind of ornamentation, whether it be landscaping or, you know, it could be a false window that doesn't show through to the utility room. Just something to ornament the wall and not have a blank facade there. So if it's agreeable with the commissioners, we're certainly willing to work that out with town staff. What that is.
Makes sense. Else before we open it up?
I do not at this time. I should note, I think Mark had already briefly mentioned it, but some of the drainage was slightly modified because it's a previously roofed structure where now it's open to air. the design and system is substantially similar, but some of the inner workings of that design have been modified and given a conceptual okay this time. I think that's it for me.
Just to revisit a point that Mr. Wetzel made earlier about the test pits. Those are required by the state stormwater management standards, so that has to happen before the infiltration systems can be installed, and that'll be worked through with engineering department. They oversee that permit.
What happens if it's not suitable soil?
If it's not,
Not suitable,
well, if it's not suitable, what they have to do is excavate and replace it with suitable soils that go down far enough to infiltrate into the ground.
Sometimes the systems will grow, so instead of 9,
right?
12.
Yeah, I just didn't know how, it's got limited space, and I know that has room to get larger. It's always good to know before you start what you're getting into. And I assume you've done a 21E on?
Yes.
No, that's out there.
All right, I'd like to open it up to the public if anyone, I guess, first in the room has comments, and then we'll open it up to comments online too. Sort of presume.
Lisa Johnson, 166 Washington Street. My husband Bruce Johnson is here as well. We took a long look at the proposed major plan change. I think I just want to remind the board members that have been here from the beginning, February 2022 was the first hearing, and maybe bring to the newer members' attention. There's many revisions outlined in the proposed plan change that do not address a number of issues that were discussed last year in the 7 public hearings for this project. The location of this proposed development has been an issue from the very beginning, as it is a very small lot at an intersection that's been referred to by Cpdc members during past hearings as fragile, failing, and noted that one car here or there makes a big difference. Residents at a recent town meeting described this intersection as a nightmare, a mess, and an F level per a recent traffic study. The major plan change document dated today notes the applicant agrees to contribute funds to the town, quote, in recognition of the fact that this project will add traffic to an already congested area with problematic intersections. All this said, I think it's important to remember the Reading Police Department has gone on record saying, and I quote, "The police department has too many concerns for public safety to support this project. The police department feels the project will have too great of a negative impact on the area due to our traffic and parking concerns." They also said, the other concern the police department has is the impact this development will have on traffic. Over the past 5 years, and this was stated in February 2022, there have been more than 60 motor vehicle crashes at the intersection of Main Street and Washington Street. I know there's been a lot of changes to the design. Eliminating 2 units is not going to change what was said at 7 meetings. Also related to traffic is a concern that was noted in many past hearings that has also not been resolved on the new design. Non-residential vehicles like UPS, Amazon, a pizza delivery guy, customers going into the retail area will approach the building, and since they are unable to see what is available for parking or loading, if there is loading, because it was just a comment made, something along the lines, if there's loading here. So there always was loading there, but either way, they will not see what is in there for parking. They'll come up to the garage door. They'll either have to, if they can't see what's available, there are definitely people, drivers, we see it all the time, that will just half be on the sidewalk of Maine or maybe even Washington to make their quick delivery, run in and out. Or they will enter the parking area. If there's no parking available, they're gonna exit right onto Washington Street, be right back at the intersection. Again, I don't think removing 2 units and some height is gonna help that at all. An additional notation on this topic is the right turn only signage that will be posted and striped within the lot, as noted in this proposed major plan change. It was confirmed in a past hearing that the Reading Police Department cannot enforce a right turn only here as it's private property. When this topic was discussed in a past hearing, a CBDC member stated that it's a very important element of the traffic impact, and if it can't be enforced realistically, that's something we have to consider. I'd also like to note that 2 right turn only signs were installed on Green Street in recent years, the next street over. With this in mind, the right turn only signs, they're fully enforceable on Green Street by the Reading Police, yet many vehicles take a left-hand turn there. We see it all the time. With this in mind, I can't imagine drivers pulling out of this parking lot will be overly concerned about these right turn only signs, especially if their destination is 95 North or the only 2 supermarkets in town. The final notation on this topic of traffic is a reminder that although the applicant has noted in various documents over the last year and at many hearings that this project will not impact the capacity of the roadways, and 138 new vehicle trips per day at this site is a minimal amount. That has not been the opinion of everybody that has attended the hearings or read the articles in the newspaper. In addition, peak traffic times has been referenced often with no concern for this intersection throughout the day. I provided the CPDC with pictures taken on Thursday, June 23rd, 2022 at 1:27 p.m. I was looking for the most random date and time of day, not a peak time. I have the pictures here if you'd like to see them. They show the line of traffic on Washington Street, waiting for the light to turn green, showing what the middle of the afternoon is like in this area. 17 cars were waiting at the traffic light at this time. 17 early afternoon. As mentioned by CBDC board members at past hearings, to avoid the long queue on Washington Street, drivers sometimes take Elliott, Village, and Haven Streets instead, much smaller roads. This area cannot afford additional vehicle trips. Again, eliminating 2 units is not going to resolve this issue. With all this in mind, I do have a question for Andrew and the board. What is the RPD's input on the applicant's new proposed plan? Have they said anything about traffic recently?
So just to step back, that original RPD memo was written at the time that the project was proposed at 20 units.
Sorry, Andrew, that's incorrect. It's
That is
dated
correct.
February 4th and they say right in it. Do you want to pull it up? I have a copy.
Can probably find it, yeah.
You can probably find it pretty quick, but I do have it here if you want. See, that was brought up at another hearing. That's why I looked back on the date. February 4th, 2022. And it does refer
It
to,
does refer to 12 units, I'm mistaken. Thank you
Yep.
very much
Yep.
for that correction. At this point in time, they haven't repeated or provided new comments on traffic generation.
it is our belief that eliminating 2 units and giving the town $35,000 for further design study of the intersection area is not going to solve any of the original traffic issues with the project. We've all seen the upgrades that have been done to the intersection over the years, delaying the traffic lights, updating pedestrian crossing signals, etc. If there were any additional improvements that could be done to this intersection, they would have been done already. In regard to density, after 7 public hearings last year, the CPDC approved this development for 5 units, although 12 units were proposed. It is surprising that the applicant's major change eliminates only 2 units from their original plan. This brings the density from the proposed 51 units per acre to 42.6 units per acre. I need water, excuse me. So 51 units per acre to 42.6 units per acre, where 20 per acre are allowed by right. This is a mere 16.5% reduction. And although there is an added setback and 1 story has been removed, it is somewhat misleading as the new design at 39 feet 10 inches is only a 5 foot 2-inch reduction on the majority of the building compared to the previous design. So it's a story, but 5 feet, 2 inches. The most important density waiver related piece I believe the board should be thinking about while considering this major plan change is something the applicant has referenced multiple times when they compare 8 previously approved downtown smart growth district development projects that were given density waivers. All 8 of these projects are adjacent to low volume streets, which is where the entrances and exits are located. Public parking spaces directly in front, on the side, or both in all cases, and some are even adjacent to public parking lots where those entrances and exits are located. It is a very different situation at 459 Main Street. Density waivers being approved at these 8 other locations are simply not comparable to this proposed development. I believe everyone here knows what these 8 locations are, but I can list them. I have them written down right here if you need them. In regard to design, the applicant has changed the materials that were approved in the original proposal, and they're no longer following section 7.5.5 of the DSGD design guidelines regarding a change in plan. We're hoping we can be told the reason for these changes and if the board feels these are positive changes for this building. There's a few smaller revisions to the plan we feel are not improvements to the overall project, and would like to learn the reasons for these and hear what the board feels, and if the board thinks these are positive changes. There's just a few. Should I mention those as well?
Sure.
Instead of an 8-foot fence along the eastern property line, which abuts a 2-family home, they now note a 6-foot wooden stock fence. The utilities location has changed, which seems to have caused the trash area to change as well. Instead of the trash area being next to Main Street, it now abuts the yard of a 2-family home, again with a 6-foot fence. It is noted that trash and recycling is to be managed by private entities, and language detailing how trash and recycling will be managed on site shall be described within the property documents. This is very vague, and it does sound like that information will be forthcoming, but I am curious if anyone on the board or the applicants, because of experience, can weigh in on what a building like this typically would do, removing that trash and recycling. And lastly, road lane closures are noted, but seem to only reference Main Street, including the statement, no lane should be closed for more than 2-hour periods. Does the info in this section pertain to Washington Street as well? And if not, what are the lane closure plans for Washington Street? Thank you for your time. Do you have anything to add?
Excuse me, yeah, the only thing, this process has been going on quite some time, everybody knows that. This new plan, we've just seen it since Thursday. I'm not sure what happens in executive sessions and all that sort of thing, but it seems like there's potentially a lot of things that's gonna be handled after a decision potentially, and just concerned how that could affect schedule. This is a very busy area, and if you get delays, it's just gonna be a bad impact on our home, our neighborhood, and the town in general. So just a bit of a concern there, how quickly we're going through this new plan. It is a new plan, it's a new architect, it's a different design. Yes, the concept is similar, and there is some reductions that, Lisa mentioned, but just from a planning standpoint, I feel like things feel a little bit rushed to us, but again, we don't know what's been happening over the past few months.
When you say delays, are you concerned about delays between now and the time, like, this is all done and something built, or the delays in the construction phase?
Well, if, for instance, some of these things that are to be determined later.
Yeah.
On the exterior or what have you, I think the term was, just wrote it down. These items to be worked out with staff.
Yeah.
What if there's a time component to working those things out after construction starts? That's my concern.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I understood.
Yep.
So you laid out a lot of stuff there. I think specifically, right, the four items at the end.
The questions at the end?
The questions at the end,
Yep.
right? I guess starting from the bottom, that I'm gonna say, which we were told to punt, that, traffic is apparently, chief of police, so we can't answer that.
Maybe the applicant can just answer one part of it, if they don't mind. It does clearly say in the document, no lane should be closed for more than 2 periods. Is that just Main Street?
So I just wanna kind of step back on that condition, which is a draft document, and based on the chief of police's letter that we would likely amend
That's gonna get
that
eliminated.
language. They have certain conditions they can place on a contractor, but they felt that the 2-hour limit put them in a tough situation to enforce or condition and plan for. Police details are scheduled at 4-hour minimums, so to charge that and say 2 hours maximum, there's just some conflict there with that language, so they're just asking that it falls back in their discretion and approval process during construction.
So, right, if they want it, they can have it, but let's just play back what you just said, because they have 4-hour minimums, then there's gonna be 4-hour periods of, because you guys, right, if you guys are allowed 4 hours, you're gonna take it. I would too, if I were you, right? But if they're allowed 4 hours, then there's gonna be 4-hour lane closures on Main Street. So that's not us, that's the police, have at it.
I think with certain things like utilities, if we have 2 hours, it's gonna take us 16 hours. It would drag it out 8 days versus we may be able to get it done in 2 days. So the job scope is gonna take what the job scope. You don't wanna mobilize 8 times to do one task.
So, it's funny that you brought that up because, right, I've just been listening to, WGBH put on a thing about
The Big Dig?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
that was an excellent series. I
So,
watched it.
right, and I'm involved in all sorts of projects all over the place. We have as a, especially in the Boston area, right? We somehow, right, after the big dig, right, that may not be the reason of it, but we switched from a period, in the 80s and 90s where any project, you didn't impact anyone, right? Which is part of what happened with the big dig, right? Like no noise, no nothing. And now we're in this process, right? Where, you know what, let's inconvenience people, but we're only gonna do it for 6 hours or for 2 weeks instead of, 2 years. I'm just noting, right, like that's really where you're falling, is that it's okay, I'm gonna, you're gonna have to endure whatever, right? Not you, but it's the town, right? It's the traffic in downtown. It's gonna have to endure a horrible situation or I shouldn't say horrible, I'm not gonna use that word, right? Right, but, like a situation where downtown is really messed up. It has been for months anyways, right? For a prolonged period of time, I mean, a shorter period of time than just like minor inconvenience for a long time. I don't know which is right, but one is not necessarily better than the other. We just happen to be in this term, right? This phase where like, this is the thing du jour of like, let's just get in and get it done.
And I think.
So neither are better, like neither answer.
And, for instance, they just did the repaving down there, so there was some traffic management and inconvenience and detours related to that on Washington Street.
Yeah.
There's gonna be more stuff done at the intersection. I think the important part is that it gets planned, gets communicated. That's my big beef with police and public works, is that I'll try driving downtown from my house over off of West Street, and there'll be 4 road closures before I get to Main Street, and there's no signs of where to go. And I've relayed that to the town, and it's easy to do. You send out a text message, something on email, you call the reverse 911. There's a lot of ways that they can communicate that, and the town doesn't do a very good job of that. When you have projects that are in these kind of congested areas where it has a big impact on traffic, it really needs to be communicated ahead of time. But again, that's up to the staff.
Or even just a sign, 2 or 3 intersections up does wonders.
And you know,
That's not a unique.
and you guys are working right there on Woburn Street now, and so you know what, that's a pretty busy street too, and it's pretty narrow. It's like Washington Street, so you understand what the issues are and what impacts it has on traffic.
So just to confirm, although that document referred to Main Street, everything is being pushed to the police by their request, but no one here seems to know when they close lanes for this construct, is Washington part of that? They only refer to Main Street, so I'm wondering what the thought is.
Well, there's obviously going to be some times when they're going to have to close the lane on Washington Street because there's
It wasn't worded, it was
utilities.
worded all about mains.
Well, there's utilities that have to be cut and capped on that side. There's curbing and new sidewalks that have to go in. I'm sure you guys are gonna have some deliveries and scaffolding on that side that it's gonna have to happen. So there are gonna be times, it's a matter of making sure that the neighbors know what's going on and it's not done on, the Saturday before the 4th of July or something like that. It needs to be planned and coordinated.
No, I forget what your 4 questions
Sure,
were.
because it's not- Okay, well, we are curious why
Yeah.
it was an 8-foot fence along the eastern property and now it's a 6-foot fence. Reason, or do you guys like that better, the board?
I can't tell you why it got changed. I think if we were to request it to return back to 8 foot, the applicant might be amenable to that. So we could make that request. And therefore, Jesse, I will make that request. Could we go to an 8-foot fence?
I think that's fine, right? I mean, the 6 foot is a more, I would say, residential look, but if 8 foot is preferred, we can do that.
And the utilities location was changed, and that, I think that's why the trash area moved away from Main Street and is now in that back corner is.
It might just be a matter of permit control.
Yeah, well, I think, right, an 8-foot fence in that area would help.
Yeah, I agree with that, because it'd be a litter.
Can we pull, can we pull the site plan, the first level plan?
I think one of those has to go there, either trash or transformer in that
transformer.
corner.
Yeah.
So
And we-
if you prefer the trash being away from the property, we could always go back to putting the trash room there and make that an open air
I
transformer.
believe there was storage there and items were down below or in the building. Does anybody remember where?
That was a storage room in the
That-
previous plan.
So where were the utilities in the transformer?
This is much more well thought out of where we are. So we need a water room, we need an electrical room. We're gonna need a meter room, and right here, we're proposing a transformer room because, after working on Woburn Street with Reading Municipal Light, the subsurface transformers below ground, they're not really available as they maybe were at one time. So we have a vault room projected on the corner right there, that's actually a transformer inside where the trash originally was. We are not opposed to looking into flip-flopping them and making that an open air transformer in the back, so you don't have trash abutting a fence near you and going back to a trash room right there. But again, one of them has to go one place or the other.
So just to be clear, the originally approved plan, the transformer and utilities were where? Because you guys approved it, where were they? They weren't back near our home, and they weren't where they are now. I'm just curious
It's
if
been a lot
someone
of-
could pull up an old
There's been
plan.
a lot of revisions, I think we should.
What was approved for the transformer and the utilities? I'm curious.
So there was underground
Underground.
basement utility or storage, there was utility room at the garage level. I can't recall exactly what a transformer was. I feel like it was along Washington Street for some
It
reason.
was, I think so, it was in the rear along Washington.
Yeah.
So there's been a few different versions of how we went about it. But I think to Bobby's point and to solve for, you know, your concern, I think we can see if that's feasible, and if it is, I think it's a solid solution.
I mean, the concern with the trash is the amount, right, from 10 units. I mean, all throughout town, McDonald's, I mean, these trash pickups happen, it's supposed to be after 7 o'clock, but 4 o'clock's not unusual. You know, as well as tenants, you know, being out there, it's noise as much as anything. I don't know how much noise the transformer makes, so it's hard for us to, I mean, I appreciate the,
Yeah, they're silent.
They're silent.
We've done both recently on the Eaton Street project, right? We had above surface transformers and also the dumpster for 12 townhomes, and you know, it's a smaller dumpster and it doesn't always run and it's kept clean.
Picked up once a week.
I do think, I mean, I would think that the trash would be better where functionally where you're showing the transformer, right? Because it's right near the door. Someone can, right, this is the other question that you had is how does trash really work? It, you know, someone's gonna have to, right, those are all gonna have to be on, you know, some sort of probably manually size, you know, rollout containers, so that you can roll them out to the street.
We have a 21 unit going in Melrose right now, similar situation. We use totes, so we propose totes.
Totes, yeah.
We would just do them 2 times per week rather than 1 because they're a little smaller container.
I believe that's what Rise 475 does
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
So they have totes instead of a dumpster, because you can't lift it inside, put it out. They roll it out, they put it in the truck, and then they take off.
And you can change frequency on that all the time.
Yeah.
I liked the transfer. That got changed, not even referenced.
The transformer.
Well, it just seems like it's a lot more of a change on those 2 corners than it really was
yeah, she's saying that
described.
there wasn't anything. There was
Like, what do I
storage-
like the
storage
way
in that
it was
area.
before, it was great. But that got approved by the board. Now it's like no one really, the board seems to have a problem with it, but I thought I'd bring it up.
I think I would prefer to have the transformer in the open area from a maintenance point of view. It's a lot easier if you have to replace a transformer.
Yeah.
Come in with a crane and lift it out than it is to get it out of an underground vault.
We're not opposed to that.
Yeah, I think we're open.
So Jesse, if you want.
The design guidelines, transitional zone, previous design, it wrapped the building, you know, for that purpose. It's obviously, you know, an approach to Reading for us and a lot of people coming into town. How does the board feel about the fact that that's just a plain rear with, you know, no material changes?
Can we maybe look at it again? There was a lot
They're
of
asking
discussion
for
about
a waiver
how
on this.
beautiful it was. That was brought up in every meeting, the most beautiful building in Reading. And now we're looking at this, it's like, what happened to the outside of this beautiful building?
You wanna see the rear elevation, is that what it was? I think.
Rear.
The rear,
Yeah.
East.
yeah.
We talked about the height,
I think the rear is.
but there's also as many, you know, windows that there were on 4 stories. I know you gotta cram
Okay.
more light into the apartments and so forth, but there's no relief or anything like that. It's a flat wall, balconies protrude. there's a guideline for that. It's, I believe they're asking for a waiver for.
So, you know, I'll say that with the change, right, from, even though they're higher stories, the change, right, because there's a whole thing about the step backs, right? In going down to the 3-story, right? The point on that is to provide that some sort of, you know, articulation and you know, so that it isn't a blank wall. And I don't know, when I look at this with all the balconies, you do oddly have, right, this sort of like, because you're not, right, you've got the, you're never really gonna see from this side the first story, right? Because there's the fence between your property and their property. And so, right, like if it was to, right, letter of the law, you could, right, there could be some articulation there, but what's that, right? And I think at one point they played that game a little bit, right? Where like, oh yeah, that's the building and it juts out 5 feet, and so that's part of the articulation. You know, I guess when I looked at this, I didn't see that this wasn't keeping with the intent of what we're trying to get at in the design guidelines. So, you know, even if it doesn't meet the exact letter. Is there any comments?
I haven't seen any hands raised or chats.
All right.
I had a question. I think you said there was 138 new daily vehicle trips?
They had a traffic study that, yes, and it was interesting because that traffic study, I believe, I don't have it in front of me, but on my notes, from 2013, and then they said that, well, that's okay, think about 2019, because you have to just get close to the application year. So, and even that was 138 new vehicle trips.
Created by this project, or?
Yes.
Because I saw, and I didn't see the traffic report, I just saw
It's in all the old, yeah,
That was with 12 units.
but
that was with 12 units.
that's, I've seen traffic studies and I was like, there's no way people are driving in and out of this place that many times. But I haven't looked at this traffic report at all, but just for that number of units, that seems like an awful lot of traffic.
Yeah, and I think is that a net of what's currently occurring there today. I think that was total trips that would be produced from the building. It's not a net number from what is in operation today. So to say they're exactly new trips, I think is a little confusing. I think it would say these are trips being generated, and then we'd have to look to see what is being netted from the existing operation. Where, you know, if you've been by there recently, I mean, he's got a lot of business out there. I can't imagine that he's not doing a good 50, 60 ins and outs a day there. So I don't think it's as egregious as 130 something.
Well, it was their traffic people that said new vehicle trips, and also it was discussed about that type of a business. And it might have been John, it was someone, and I agreed because I've seen it for years. Those cars are dropped off in the morning and they're picked up when the person gets dropped off after work to pick up their car. They're not coming in and out of
There's a state inspection sticker business there now. It's a completely different business. He has cars constantly coming in and out every single day. I'm there all the time.
Yep.
So
I'm there all the time too, and it's interesting that most of the time, do you know where these people exit from? Main Street. You know why? They don't want to go onto Washington Street. No one's going to let them out. So there might be more people getting stickers and they're going right out onto Main Street and going on with their day.
Just on the number of vehicle trips, just to be clear, a trip in traffic terminology is a coming or a going. So if we're talking about 3 vehicles coming and going, that's 6 trips there.
Right.
And if you net that out over the course of a 24-hour period, that's less than 6 trips per hour. So we're talking 1 vehicle every 10 minutes to the site. So it's, I mean, we can go outside and wait for 10 minutes to see a car passing by. It's not a significant amount of traffic in the grand scheme of the operations of an intersection that has thousands of vehicle trips per day.
Yeah, and right, I'll say, I've said this, these guys have heard me say this a million times probably, right? For my concern, it's never been about the traffic generated by the site, specifically the number of cars going in and out. It's always been the time and the impact of those turning movements. So, but sort of feel like we're, right, something's gonna happen here. I guess that's whether it was them or some other proposal, right? It's not gonna continue to be he's doing a good business right now, I know, but that's not the future of this parcel.
Right, so that's why it comes down to
and
the
so-
board considering the huge density waiver or not.
Yeah, well,
On a lot where this is located compared to all the other density waivers y'all gave. Where those were located, those exits are on very quiet streets. Density waiver for this particular location, it is gonna be a nightmare, but I can tell the decision was already made, so, get going. We know what it is, you probably made the decision 2 months ago.
If I could just kind of to address that point, I mean, we recognize your concerns. You've been out here. You've expressed them many times to us, and we've listened to your comments. Recognizing that this site has been developed with a sleepy auto body shop for decades. We recognize that you live behind it, and change is scary. I get it. You don't want to see something come in and ruin your neighborhood. You don't want to see something come in and inconvenience you, but we've gone through a really thorough process here with a very thorough board. Great development team. These guys know what they're doing. They've managed sites all over Reading and other towns. They'll give you their cell phone number. Sorry to offer that up, guys. And the design of the project has been changed to accommodate you and your concerns. And frankly, 10 residential units and a small store, there's not much you can do on a site like this that's less impactful. There's just not. And there's a lot of uses that are allowed by right in this town. It would be significantly more impactful in terms of traffic and site and inconvenience for you. So recognizing your concerns and with respect, I think that we've done a good job of trying to address those and work through that with the board.
I'd just like to clarify that when we talk about anything as abutters, that's one subject. When I talk about traffic, I'm talking about the town. I'm talking about all the residents in this town that drive through that intersection. That's a whole different ballgame than what you've done to help us as abutters. I appreciate it. Nothing is going to change what's gonna happen traffic-wise. 5 units, way helpful. 10 units, it's not just the people who live there. Everybody gets Amazon. Everybody has UPS. Everybody gets pizza deliveries. People use Uber. You cannot see what the parking situation is in there. They're gonna be pulling in, they're gonna be pulling out, and it's gonna be more than probably 138. I'll be happy with 138 the way this thing is set up. And the real reason is, the bottom line, it's been the thing from day one. An exit out on Washington Street, that close to this intersection, it's absurd. And there's plenty of businesses can go there, and that's not what we're here to talk about, but Dunkin' Donuts across the street, people are in and out all day long. No one affects traffic over there. not one car ever. It's Main Street, there's 2 lanes on each side, they pull in and they pull out. Washington Street,
Cheryl also has her hand raised on the Zoom.
Sure, Cheryl? Can you take her off mute, or can she take herself off mute?
Should be able, there we go.
Hi, can you hear me now? I think you had it, so we couldn't unmute until you called on us.
Yes, we can
Um,
hear you.
I'm just listening in as a very concerned resident, and I've followed this a little bit, but I've been a resident of Reading for over 50 years. My concern definitely is the traffic, and it's definitely the intersection itself, Main and Washington. There is no other intersection. Again, I've been here since 1970, I think. Lived here, big part of my life. There's no other intersection in Reading that is like Washington and Main Street. I do believe many years ago, it was considered one of the worst intersections in the state. I know a couple of people may have said, well, maybe it's in the town, but I do believe it was noted one time or stated it's the worst intersection at one point in time in the state, probably because of all the statistics about accidents and what have you. I'm so concerned. First of all, I can't even wrap my head around, and I should start with no disrespect to anybody, not to the board, not to the department here, the organization, not to the builders, the developer, not even to the past owner. But one thing on my list of all my notes and my thoughts have been about this as I'm watching it a little bit and I'm following it, talking to, people in the town, watching it in the Chronicle, is this was going from a 1-story building with a business that only needed a small 1-story building for his mechanic shop. And I know about it because I was a customer of 128 Tire for years. And I do know that with his business, getting into it was always on Main Street, because the way he set up his property, for the majority of the time, he would keep his idle parked cars, customer cars, on the Washington Street side. So there really was hardly ever any going in and out on Washington Street as a customer. And someone might have noted it tonight, but I had it in my notes here to bring it up. It's a type of business that you bring your car in maybe in the morning, you leave it there. The gentleman would work on your car and then you come back in and you get it. Again, 1-story building, nothing much happening on Washington Street. I know I might be too late for this at all, but I can't even wrap my head around or comprehend the project that is going to go in there. And I saw, most of the diagrams of the building I saw right now through this architect, and it's very nice looking. I heard someone say, when you were talking about whatever you're going to put around the building for the aesthetics or whatever, someone likes tree. I am a tree opposed to a planter. I like trees in a sky. I like to see the sky. I like to see the trees. I think about Washington Street in Maine, and I think as it comes down the hill towards this intersection, more about tapering it off. I can't even imagine putting that type of a development on that corner. And I use that intersection constantly because our own grocery store is the only ones we have in Reading. You have majority of people go through that intersection. I think about the kids when they are off on school and they all love to go downtown. And I think and get reminded of the day that I was sitting at the intersection at a light coming from the Washington Park side of Washington Street to cross over Main. And the kids that they think they're using the traffic light to cross over, what have you. And then I think it's called jaywalking. They don't cross one way and then cross another. They cross diagonal. And I had anxiety just watching and not knowing what was going to happen to them. So thinking about it, and again, it's a beautiful building. I'm sure the developer, the builder does really great work, but I think about what it's coming from the 1-story mechanic shop, that really had nothing going on Washington Street. I can't even think about having anything entering Washington Street, especially at the intersection, because when I come from the area of the grocery stores, the Home Depot, the paper store, and you're coming to the light. Well, a lot of times we sit and wait and wait and wait and wait and hope we don't have to sit through 3 lights as it is now. But I also know people are at the business that's being developed, from the temporary mechanic who's on the site right now, I believe is what's happening. There's people trying to come out of that as well. They're trying to come out of that, and having this, I think it's just the exit onto Washington will be across from that as well too. Just in listening, I'm thinking about pedestrians. I'm hearing, and I do realize this will happen. It's going to be the construction trucks. It's going to be the new residents that are going to be there. And I had thought when I first started listening in on all of this and trying to stay up with it, as I am a resident and want to be a bit more concerned about what goes on with the development in the town, because since our first 2 developments in town years and years ago that are one's on one end of West Street, one's on the other, I just can't even get over about all the developing that is going on and the more multi-unit buildings we're bringing in. So I'm thinking about all these residents. I think it was 5 at one point, and maybe it wanted to be 12, but now it's 10. And you think if there's 2 people per year, there's like 20 more residents that are going to be on this small bit of property. And then I'm thinking, I heard people talking about garbage trucks. I'm like, wow, yeah, we'll be dealing with garbage trucks, but also more and more and more, because you see it on every street as it is, all these deliveries, Amazon, UPS, whomever else, FedExpress, whatever. I'm thinking about the backups. I'm thinking about all the traffic. I wondered about the parking, and now I did catch, I think that the bottom level is going to be commercial space. Where will those people be parking? And more, it's like the safety of this whole intersection and the log jam and the traffic, which is really super bad anyways in Reading. Again, I can't really even comprehend this whole building of this kind of magnitude to me, going in that spot. Again, the intersection, it's going to be tough on residents. It's already tough. It's only going to be worse. Let me just go over. I won't keep too much more time repeating myself, but yeah, again, let me just check and see if there was anything else I felt like I wanted to bring up because I thought was important. I just can't, to be honest with you, I can't get over any more congestion in that intersection and on that part of Washington Street itself. But then again, too, I can't even comprehend I can't imagine, even picture this building in real true life being there and what it's going to bring.
Right, lot of discussion about the intersection, Washington and Main, right? Both comments about that. I know that right, that certainly was a topic on a different application, right, for McDonald's. There's a lot of discussion, I think, at town meeting about this intersection. Right, the 138 new trips, whether that's right or not, I'm going to say it sort of doesn't matter in the sense that, right, this is an issue that I think that in general, the town, right, we sort of need to revisit this. I know that this has come up on, numerous times over my time on the board. So, we're hearing about this, rightly so, more and more. I am looking at MassDOT's accident, dashboard, and I'm going to say, luckily, right, that this isn't in the top 5% crash locations in town, but the top one, if you're interested, is over the past 5 years is at to pass maybe 2018 to 2020. I don't know if that really helps. Main Street and Franklin Street, right up by Dandelion, which again makes sense to me. So,
It's not as much the accidents, which is horrible.
Yeah,
It's the backup.
yes.
Because what you see on
Right.
Washington Street, you're never gonna see on Franklin.
No, you're, well, I know,
Those people
that's,
just
yeah.
live there. This is
Yeah,
the main
that's-
route to the supermarkets and everything else.
So
Yeah,
I-
it's the backup.
Yeah, I do think, right, this is something that we need to sort of dig in, you know.
And we're gonna hear a lot about it next week. At the McDonald's.
Yes, yeah,
And so it's a holistic problem. It's not just related to this project.
Yeah.
This project has an impact, but we've got a lot of other stuff going on down there that, the town, we've studied it a bunch of times, but never done anything.
yeah.
And there's a lot of things you can do now with smart controls that can keep the queuing to a minimum. You know, we all go through there. We all live in town. We all go down to Market Basket and stop and shop and drive back through there. And, you know, you sit there and go, well, there's no cars coming this way, but the light's still red. And so there are ways you can do smart controls that can change some of that. I don't think that intersection, there's room for doing a lot of geometry changes. But something does have to be done up at the Bolton Ash intersection.
Can I make one more comment if that's okay? Don't mean to interrupt, but when because McDonald's does keep getting brought up and that is a thing. I'm reading more and more about that. The thing about McDonald's is it's on Main Street, but I think more importantly, McDonald's already exists. McDonald's is a business. It's been there for years. So it's already there. It's been there. What's happening now on the corner of Washington and Main is adding.
We're not gonna talk about McDonald's per se, right? The point of bringing that up in this discussion is that there are numerous sort of developments and conversations that all play into some improved solution to this intersection.
Yeah, correct.
so-
Thank you. Yeah.
so-
Cheryl, can you provide me with your last name and address for the public record?
Sure, it's Surrett, Surette. I'm on County Road.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
I just want to say we do appreciate being a part of this process. It's not our favorite thing to do, but it seems like we know you all a little bit.
I'm gonna open this back up because it's
hot.
getting hot.
That's a nice of you.
My final comment for tonight.
All right.
For me.
I'm sure this is it.
Other comments, questions?
The only other comment I can make is this board does have limitations to what we can enforce and what we can make applicants do. And it's always a trade-off between what we're asking for the applicant, what's best for the town. And the applicant has rights and we need to respect those rights, but we also have to take into account what's happening. So I know it's a poor excuse. If I could wave the magic wand and solve all the problems, I would, but we can't. And if you're really concerned about traffic, the road commissioners meet Tuesday nights in the room next door.
I respect that, and that's why we felt, and I think a lot of people in town felt, not perfect, but 5 units. 5 units, get maybe similar to some of the other smaller places like what they have on Woburn Street and they did on the Chronicle Building. That's getting a little bit more in line with, and you guys did it. You did it. You approved this project for 5 units. Yet here we are, and we can speculate why we're here. Why they may very well give them their 10, but it's wrong.
I had one more question of the applicant, and that is, will all material storage and excavation material be on site?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
we try to kind of limit how much we bring in, kind of like Woburn Street, we have 0 storage over there. And when I say 0,
It's a much, Woburn Street's a much tighter site than this.
yeah. I think, Andrew, we've worked with you guys pretty well on making it work. It's a tricky site, but we have a lot more. I think there's almost
It's double the
parking
double the
spaces.
site, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Might even be more than double. We don't even, I think we have 7 parking spaces over at Woburn Street.
Woburn Street's 4,000 square feet, this is 10.
With everything going in and out of a parking lot. Not an intersection, not a red light and a green light, a parking lot.
Very busy park.
You took about 6 parking spaces too while you were at it, but it's good because you needed it. You're not gonna get any parking spaces around this building, so. Apples to oranges, guys, apples to oranges.
All right, I think, are we to a point, do we wanna go over the draft decision and see if there's
Yeah.
issues there?
So we had drafted this up as a major plan change. I noticed it as such due to the impact to the change of envelope, the change of units. This was clearly defined as a major plan change under 40R. That's why we noticed it as and why we have this separate decision versus potentially amending the original decision and going through that. So we've used this to summarize what the changes were area by area, and we can walk through that now. But again, we had summarized the list of submittals, which include the plan elevations, the civil sheets, and the quick summary that was submitted, as well as a new abutters mailing and this draft decision. So summarizing what a plan change was here, minor plan changes typically revolve around minor utility or other adjustments, but this was not that. So thus the major plan change. We wanted to note that this project had an original approval on September 12th, 2022 for that 4-story mixed-use building with commercial square footage, parking, and other at the site. We did note that, yes, that project was proposed at 12 units and requested a waiver for such, where that waiver was then denied, thus approval in essence of 5 units for that, because the density waiver was denied. We summarized here the proposed modifications from that decision and that plan set, and a lot of that revolved around the building envelope, including the height. The previous building design was approved at the full 4 stories and 45 feet to parapet. The proposed modifications reduced the building height to 3 stories and a maximum height of 42 feet 10 inches at that front parapet, where it's at the corner in Maine where that step up around the parapet occurs. And then around the residential levels, the building measures 39 feet 10 inches to the previous comments earlier in the night. There is still an elevator shaft and other utility infrastructure on the roof, but they don't account towards the height definition. And on the plan set, they were all shown to be centrally located and screened. A lot of the setbacks actually are substantially similar from the north, south, and west. They're pretty substantially similar to what was previously approved on the building design with some variable setbacks. The north maintains its 3.5-foot setback from that northern property line where it abuts Rise 475 and some residential balconies. South, we had some variable setbacks for some inserts that allowed for seating. In the original plan design, it's now modified to be landscaping and access to the lobby. And in the west, from Main Street, similar, where the inserts into the building that were proposed as dining or other amenity space along the sidewalk have been modified to be utilized for landscape and planters and again access to the spaces. From the eastern property line is where you get the that shift in setback. So there is a 16-foot and 8-inch setback to where that building kind of jogged out and along the north facade towards the trash enclosure. But then it does encroach backwards further to 37 feet 6 inches for a majority of that eastern building plane. And we just wanted to capture that here. Step backs, the original building had a series of step backs, which is at higher elevations and floors. Because it was a 4-story building, there were design requirements in the guidelines around such. At 3 stories, there is no step backs proposed at this time. Again, the unit count was originally proposed to include 12 units and was approved under the condition of a 5-unit maximum. The proposed modification proposes 10 total units, all of which are 2 bedrooms. The original parking included 20 parking spaces, 4 of which were deemed compact spaces and smaller in size than standard. Shared across the uses of the site where 15 was required. 15 parking spaces are still required. And to remind all, this has gone back to previous zoning, not what's in the bylaw today. So we were using that zoning, and the proposed modifications reduce parking from 20 to 18 spaces, again, still above what's required. There are 2 ADA accessible spaces, 12 spaces to be dedicated to the residential use, and 4 dedicated to the commercial and visitor use. All the parking is to be standard sized or greater, and 5 of the spaces shall be designed with EV-ready infrastructure should there be a need for such from a resident. A series of bicycle parking is included, and the loading zone is to be striped within the garage abutting the commercial partition as originally proposed. There were some of those modifications to the access and circulation that we discussed tonight. The previous application had a series of entries, both for residential and commercial, where they've now been reduced from 2 to 1 each, at least from the street side. There is other access within the garage. And then for vehicles will still enter on Main Street and exit onto Washington Street. Right turn only signage and striping will be installed, but I just want to remind all it's not enforceable by the RPD, so we're working within the building itself here. The materials and design have slightly modified from the blue shiplap and green slated shingles to the more brownish grayish color and red masonry brick instead of yellow. Gooseneck lighting is along front Main Street and wood paneling for the commercial storefront. So as opposed to the original. And again, importantly, I think on the north facade where there was previously no windows or a change in materials, there is now. They wrap the brick around to that northern facade and the shiplap above, as well as 2 windows, I believe, on the northern facade for bedrooms. Balconies are maintained for each unit, but the roof deck that was previously proposed on the 4th floor has now been removed entirely. Landscaping, a series of planters are proposed around the building site, where previously they were really located at the garage exit and building entry only. So a series of planters are now proposed. Building access, I think I summarized that.
I'm back on landscaping. It says the original approval also included an 8-foot fence.
Good catch.
It's been reduced to 6, so.
Yeah, and I think based on the conversations, we can strike that. Because 8 fence sounds like it will be maintained under a condition, yep. Thank you, Mark. Some slight modifications to the drainage design, but those have been reviewed and conceptually approved with more info on the test pits and other needed as we move forward towards permitting if and when we get there. The utilities remain substantially similar, though I would note that that basement utility room has been excluded from this proposal and there is no basement proposed. The transformer I can note, and I have noted as a condition below, which we'll get to in a second, to be rediscussed. So I don't have that captured in here at this time. I can certainly add language if needed. Trash removal, again, this might be modified based on the condition, but based on the plan we have and the proposal we have, it is located in the northeast corner at this time, surrounded by a 6-foot fence.
8-foot
At least say 8 foot, yep. So I might highlight these just as noting that I might have to come back to them. Can't see my highlight up here on my Zoom, so please bear with me.
But was it accepted by the applicant to put the transformer outside?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Yes. Just gonna highlight these. Case, I don't think we need to change them, but I'll come back in a second. So waivers have been applied for the current proposal. So there was a series of previously approved waivers that we're not revisiting under this modification decision. They were approved and some remain substantially similar to this proposal, thus there's no need to reevaluate them under the proposed modification, but we did want to note that this specific proposal does require a project density waiver of 42.6 units per acre, where 20 units per acre is allowed by right. This represents a 16.5% reduction from the original waiver request of 51 units per acre, and the project has been reduced from 12 units to 10. And just as a reminder, that 51 units per acre waiver was denied by the Cpdc. So this would be a revote on that specific waiver. And design guidelines section 755 does still apply, specific to the north facade is how we had interpreted it. I know there's questions on the southern facade as well coming up from Main Street, but we felt that that had complied. But we felt that this waiver should still be sought for the north facade, given that it is pretty flat on that facade. There is some change in material with the brick to clapboard siding, but it's still flat. So we just wanted to recognize that the applicant has withdrawn and rescinded the following waiver requests that were previously approved, and that includes the compact spaces that was previously approved because there are no compact spaces here. The garage drive aisle width was previously approved at 24 feet wide and 26 foot by right, or as required is now proposed. And design guideline section 712 was previously approved to provide those step backs at the 4th floor level, as in conjunction with a setback that was previously proposed and approved as well. So that waiver had gotten an approval but is no longer needed because we are now at a 3-story building and not a 4-story building. So section 712 was specific to 4-story buildings. Any questions on findings or waivers before maybe I move forward?
The only thing, I'm not sure where I'd add it, but I think you want to leave for further discussion that second exit on the retail section.
Yep, I will capture that. So under conditions, we have our general conditions that any other modifications that come to light need a review and could trigger potentially planned modification processes again. All conditions in that original approval should still apply to the maximum extent possible, that they aren't rendered obsolete by this decision. And there's no signage yet proposed or approved herein for going forward. So prior to the start of construction and issuance of a building permit, we would like to see, again, there's a series of other conditions related to construction management plan, pre-construction meeting, and other needs from staff in the original approval. I've tried to tie this to what we've talked to tonight and throughout this process, which include other permits required. There's mention of the traffic light control. So I want to make sure that the applicant submits a plan and or coordinates with the town engineer, our department, and public safety as needed on that infrastructure location, so as not to impede the accessibility of the sidewalks. I think that's important, so I wanted to capture that. Materials and signage we had discussed tonight, providing sample materials of the proposed building design, which was previously conditioned, but now I wanted to include language as to the anticipated signage locations and potential dimensions of such, so we can make sure that those things are working well within the design before it gets too far. Other plan changes that I've conditioned, we had briefly mentioned that the additional landscape noted along the building's transformer room facade fronting Main Street should include planting to the max extent possible. This could be additional planters, this could be lattice to promote ivy growth or something like that up the wall, or other material to encourage plant growth, but I want to put that language there to make sure we can try to find some opportunity there if that room even if that were to convert to trash, I feel like that condition would still stand. The applicant shall provide a detail of decorative style bollards for the Washington and Main Street intersection, and we can work with you on that because we're going through some streetscape elements right now, and to the best that we could tie in with you guys, that would probably be great. The easternmost fence shall be noted at 8 feet in height and shall enclose the dumpster enclosure entirely if that enclosure stays. Again, even if that becomes transformer, that should still be wrapped continuously around in the 8 feet, in my opinion. And then the applicant shall evaluate the feasibility of prioritizing locating the dumpster enclosure within the garage and installing the transformer in that northeast corner of the site. So I'd like some feedback on that before we issue a building permit. That should be able to be worked out with RMLD and other partners before then.
You might want to add totes to the dumpster thing, because I don't think they're gonna put any dumpster inside the garage. Just to keep yourself.
During construction, we had left some conditions substantially similar to our general conditions in the other original approval. This draft condition, which was here noting that the road lane closures or other impacts, we're looking to be conditioned to mitigate that impact, but based on the comments we've gotten from staff departments, I've modified this that the applicant and owners shall meet any requirements deemed necessary by RPD, fire department, engineering, DPW, or planning when proposing to utilize area within the public right-of-way or impact the public right-of-way for a period of time. I can work on that language a bit, either now or tomorrow, either now or in the future, but just want to note that as a change.
So we'd still require the pre-construction and the construction management.
For sure, yes, absolutely. This was prior to the issuance of occupancy conditions. I believe this condition was originally located prior to vertical construction. We had moved it to prior to the issuance of occupancy permits so we could get some time as well to better understand what we might like to do with the funding and feel it either or I'm not opposed to, but felt this might just be a benefit for schedule's sake. And yeah, the street tree, we just wanted to know prior to occupancy permit that we want to make sure that street tree is maintained on Main Street, whether that's maintained, relocated, replaced as deemed required by the tree warden. I should note that Washington Street tree should be evaluated as well, or plantings, I think, to Tom's point. If we can add anything over there. And the last comment was as-built plans related to these modifications as the project would reach conclusion. And outside of that, the plan change language and appeal language was typical in any decision. So hope I captured everything. If anybody has comments, questions, please let me know.
One quick question, Andrew.
Yep.
On page 3, the south and west setbacks, did you have 6 inches to 5 foot 10 inches?
Yep.
For both the south and the west?
Did not have it for the west, thank you.
We need a clause, something to the effect that traffic slash circulation is subject to approval by the police department.
I think
Well,
that was,
yeah,
yeah, you had something
Yeah.
in there related to that.
I can really change. Yeah, and then through our pre-construction process, we'll be sure to evaluate all of that, which is tied into the original approval. So if the board were to move forward tonight, we would recommend voting on waivers one by one, public hearing and the decision itself, but I'm gonna pass it to Ethan, who I think has a comment. Oh, sorry, I thought I heard you say something.
So, yeah, first, right, any other comments on the draft decision?
Captured.
All right, so, right, a couple of things. One is I think we need to close the public hearing. And then, as you said, we'll vote on the waivers, themselves and then the decision itself.
Motion to close the public hearing for 459 Main Street.
All those in favor?
Oh, wait, before you vote,
Sure.
you want me to vote in tonight? You just have to say so.
Yes,
That's okay.
yes,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, please. All those in favor?
Aye.
And so, right, there's two waivers that we need to vote on. There is the project density waiver. After request a waiver to allow for a site density of 42.6 units per acre.
Motion to waive the requirement for a density of 20 units per acre and to increase that density to 42.6 units per acre. For the project of 459 Main Street.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And then a waiver for the design guidelines section 7.5.5.
Motion to waive the design guidelines, section 7.5.5 for the project at 459 Main Street.
All those in favor?
Aye. Finally, we need a motion to approve the entire major modification. Motion to approve the major modification as amended for the project at 459 Main Street. Any discussion quickly? Hearing none.
All those in favor?
Aye.
There will be a notice of decision that goes out. We'll try to wrap this up hopefully this week and send that notice out. From there, we'll work with you guys on whatever comes up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you.
You're gonna slam the signage.
Sure.
Before we go to our next item, like 4 minutes.
Yes.
Get away by.
Yeah.
Did I coach one of you guys in youth soccer?
Probably me.
No,
You
you
know,
got the
my-
wrong sport, rugby.
My son Jeff, remember Jeff Wetzel, was he in your class, or Matt? One of them.
Maybe.
2001 was my oldest in 2000.
You were 2000.
Good.
I was 2000.
Thank you, Ethan.
That was Matt Wetzel was my,
And I was 2005.
oh, yes.
I was 02.
Oh, you were 02, so you were between them. So I know I know there's some.
There's a lot of us.
Yeah.
I guess I have 6 brothers, so.
Too many.
They all look different now. For the under 10 kids.
I was just looking at my battery, it was like,
My
geez,
charger actually.
my charger's.
I was such a warm sweater.
I take my sweater off, I got a short sleeve shirt.
I was actually noticing, yeah, I wonder if she's on.
I'm kidding, very toasty.
Do we have another project on Main Street?
Thank you.
By Starbucks.
I assume that's the big project you were referring to before.
I just saw something and I never look at Facebook and I was looking at something. So that's whether my wife pointed it out or something.
Yep, that one will be here, don't you worry.
I read all the notices.
Thank you, board.
Because they tell me what's going on before Andrew does.
I've started to look at wetlands. And see if any of them are coming this way.
Would love to have time to know what's going on in PBD, but unfortunately.
That's another good thing about this paper. It's cheaper to advertise in this paper than like public notices.
Well,
It's generally served the legal function.
You know, when they revised a lot of the municipal laws, they tried to get it so you didn't have to advertise and post things in the newspapers. The newspapers fought it.
Yep.
And kept it in there. So I used to put stuff in the Little Sun that was, you know, like $1,000.
Yep, oh yeah.
And
Yep.
so then someone started a little local one day a week. I got early and that did it. I think I was their only customer.
Just kept them going, right?
It was me and the tree warden and Shirley. We post all the tree warden.
It's funny.
One, two.
Oh, we're hoping to get you guys out somewhere early tonight, so I'll try to give an idea.
Are we back in session?
Ready?
Yes, yeah, we're all good.
So the last item on our agenda tonight was just an update on the MBTA communities effort. So if you haven't seen the notice that printed in the paper today, if you haven't read the paper today, the public hearing for it is scheduled to open 2 weeks from today for the zoning amendment on Monday, December 18th. We had enough availability that we could schedule that and get this process rolling. So we've been working, right, and you guys have been up to date on our concept. We've heard a lot of feedback from a lot of different people in terms of the concept itself. And it feels that most are somewhat supportive of the idea and use and the form of housing that we're looking to propose and allow for. A lot of the comments are really coming back to the map and where do you draw these lines? What's too big? What's too small? What's right? What's wrong? What should we do? So I'm just gonna kind of quickly breeze through some things here. So just to remind you all some of our new district controls that we're proposing in efforts to comply with the state requirements and bring a vast majority of our lots into their by right status. We're proposing a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet in our district with a frontage minimum of 60 feet. We've slightly reduced some of the existing single family setbacks. We're proposing a 10-foot front and side and 15-foot at the rear. There might be some flexibility to play with those going forward if we wanted to switch them around or have discussions on flexible side setbacks or stringent side backs or other that have come up in some of our forums. We're slightly proposing to increase maximum lot coverage from 25% to 30%. And maximum building height stays the same as single family at 35 feet. New to the zoning and specific to this district would be a maximum density per lot, which is 22 units per acre that we're proposing. And that in efforts gets us on a 5,000 minimum square foot lot at 3 units. It would it's really 2.53, but rounding up with some language could be 3 units, which is the multifamily need. And multifamily parking, we're proposing to slightly reduce from 1.5 spaces per unit to 1.25 spaces per unit. And all of that helps and is shown to get us compliance with the law based on certain geographies that we've tested. So, and all of which have gotten a lot of strong public feedback and actually a lot of confidence in as well to date so far, so.
We've mostly gotten questions.
Yep.
We haven't gotten a lot of requests to change any of these, mostly just questions.
And when you say questions, what type of questions do you get people, like, I think, people have a hard time envisioning that, but all they know is, I don't want a triple decker next to my new house on Elmwood Drive.
People have a lot of questions about setbacks, because honestly, they're one of the easier pieces to understand. A lot of people are really curious. I think as this group itself pointed out, it's really challenging when you stand in front of a house to understand how much of that is the legal setback. So there's been questions about front versus rear primarily, in terms of there are some people who feel that they would prefer more of a setback in the front versus the back. I think he and I are kind of agnostic about that, put the number where you want as long as they stay overall the same from our perspective for compliance. Discussions around parking, there's actually a number of people who said, why don't we go lower with parking? We don't feel like those people are in the majority in town, but they exist at our meetings. And just a lot of questions in trying to understand the maximum density, since that's a new feature and how that really plays out.
And on the setbacks, it's hard to relate back to in terms of data. We get asked a lot, what do we have to support it? And we don't have a lot of structure information based on every individual lot. So we know that there's a lot of non-conforming structures in and around the zone we're proposing, but it's difficult to determine the average side yard setback of a neighborhood or front yard of a neighborhood. So we're proposing what we feel remains in character with some of these existing forms.
Just for the fun of it, could the GIS
That's what I was gonna
run
say,
per
GIS
lot,
could do that.
a setback within the lot
The
lines?
building
And,
form on the
give-
lots isn't accurate.
But you're asking if it can give a square
Give a
based on
square, so
these
you've got an outline of
proposals.
your lot,
Mhm.
then give me an outline of what the setbacks would be.
On an average one?
No, per lot.
Tony, how many people do
So-
we have in here?
So what I was thinking is, right, if you could take a neighborhood, right? That could be used as an example, right? Probably one of the ones somewhat close to the station, whether it's, around the library, closer up to the library, right? Where someone, right, people could get a sense of, well, I sort of know what that neighborhood looks like. And this is what those numbers are, so that you could do that analysis on a pretty, on a,
Short
small, yeah.
Yeah, we can try to come up with something for that, because we've been thinking similar, we've been exploring tools to see if there's something that can help visualize anything like that. At this time, we don't have the capabilities for that or tool to do it, but can we go on the GIS and quickly measure existing structures and give some sort of rough average and estimate? Yeah, I'd say look at how many non-conforming side setbacks there are down this corridor.
I'm just saying, taking the example street of, I don't even know what the name of it is, but the one that the street that's in front of Parker, Middle School. Temple, Temple, right? They're pretty close together there, but not super close, right? Maybe do that street, do one other street, here are the two, here's two examples, and then there's the numbers on those. Right, it's not a huge street, it's, it's not a lot of lots that you'd have to do.
And I don't think doing a GIS map of that has to be perfectly accurate.
Right.
You're just kind of looking, how close is that to the existing house?
Yeah.
And people aren't gonna be going, wow, it's really off.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So I would think it might be, and I'm not a GIS guy, so I don't know how, but I know, I've had GIS people do use the tools to do things like impervious area and stuff like that, and you're not using exact measurements. So it was it's fairly
Mhm.
easy to do a certain area like
Mhm.
that.
There are some streets also where we just have more, we've had like more ZBA cases, for example, where we
Right.
have good data, because we have plot plans.
Right.
So maybe we'll poke
Yeah.
around in the files and
Yeah.
see, because that's, I mean, those are the most accurate.
Andrew, are we going to allow a non-conforming setback that continues to be a non-conforming setback to expand?
So the
Or
answer,
to expand in a conforming way?
so, I mean, you get into some application specifics, but if a non-conforming setback were to extend in length or in height, it's a special permit requirement. In my eyes, as I write this zoning, a 1 and 2 unit is still subject to zoning board, and anything 3+ that triggers site plan now ties in a special permit plus site plan to CPDC. So, each
You're
app,
saying no.
no, I'm saying yes.
Well, as of right?
As of right now.
Not as of
Okay,
right.
okay, not as of right, okay.
But
Okay.
even if
Okay.
it was a single family on, like not one of these lots, like it would still trigger a special
Right.
permit anyways.
It would be handled the same way it's handled now.
Yeah,
if
okay,
that's a summary.
okay.
Just to kind of give more context to 22 units per acre on a lot, again, our minimum proposal of 5,000 square feet starts to round up to that 3 units. 80% of our lots, maybe even closer to 85% in our closer geography is 15,000 square feet or lower. So you're looking at a majority of lots between 1 to 8 units that could see their upper limits reached. So we have some larger lots. We're kind of going through a process right now to evaluate some of those larger lots. What ones are churches, what ones are single family homes and open space, and what ones are Pinevale and things like that. So to give more context to them and hopefully confidence in them, but we'll also move forward to that in a second. Parking, yeah, you guys know parking. So this was our proposed map based on the feedback we've gotten through you guys and through some of our workshopping that we've done with residents, and we can zoom in a minute, but this slide summarized that right now our proposal is 360 total acres. There's a lot of municipal land in there, there's right of way, there's other elements that need to kind of be explained further in that, but we're between 260 acres of developable land and 360 acres of developable land. Really what that means is we're looking to rezone about just less than 6% of total land in Reading, and that the multifamily zoning districts that we have currently will increase from 1% or less that exists today up to that closer 6% of land. The percentage of residential land zoned for single family home will be reduced just by 5% from 94% of our total zoned land to 89%. So a vast majority of Reading land still remains zoned for single family homes only. So I know when we zoom in on the map, people say, whoa, that's huge because it fills out the whole half acre. But when we step back and look at it from this view, 5 to 6% of your land is hopefully digestible.
I love this because it does give perspective. I know, right, and I've said this in other contexts, we get so hyper-focused on Reading even, right? And even more so on the downtown that it's sometimes hard to step back a little bit. And this does that. I love that.
And we're good, super good on the requirements for the community.
We would comply with the law. We feel strongly we haven't gotten to test this specific geography yet, but based on the dimensional controls and testing we've done of similar geographies, we think we can reach it. We're just around the 15 units per acre required across all of the land, which is why we're, again, cognizant of substantial changes to some of our dimensional controls or density capacity. But we're right around 15 units per acre across the district. So that gets us compliance, and we'll talk about unit capacity in a second, if not next. So this was it from the half mile view. this, blue circle is half mile from the train depot. The blue shaded area is our proposed new district boundary. And we can either ask you guys the questions now or continue onwards, but we had a slew of questions for you guys. We've tried to capture both sides of the neighborhoods in whatever neighborhood we have captured. We've tried to keep to natural boundaries and as well as the walking distance to some amenities that we felt were important for this zone to be maintained. So all of these zones are just 2 to 3 blocks off of the downtown. They are all within no more than 12 to maybe 15-minute walks to the depot, and that doesn't include walks to, say, Pinevale or Hunt Park and others, but they're all in walking distance to open space. They all serve direct connections to Main Street or Walker's Brook or downtown. So we felt that this geography here really captured a lot of those elements. And then on top of what we've done from there too is we went and explored all of these neighborhoods because there were some comments that maybe this zone should capture similar forms that exist today to maybe what we'd be looking at, which under potential new development. So we've left out areas like Cape Cod Ave, further down Pleasant Street because and down here by Riverside because a lot of these dwellings were split levels or capes or single-story capes, and while they could be proposed now at 35-foot single-family homes, their existing nature, these other areas, I guess, more met some of the forms that we're looking at in terms of like 2.5-story potentials or others. So, which is how we ended up down Grand Street here and a bit further down Vine Street here, because some of those forms met at St. John, so in Salem. So we looked to capture as much as we could in terms of keeping the form similar and not including areas that might see more drastic change, I guess, in the visual landscape.
Would you say that most of those that you're excluding are pretty much newer homes, 70s, 80s?
Yep, it was. Yep, it was 80s, 90s type development. Yeah, that probably won't be torn down anytime soon. But we'll have some specific questions for you guys on the map in a second. Because the next important element we wanted to capture is the unit capacity that the state uses. So the state uses unit capacity. So to remind all, the state is requiring that our zoned unit capacity achieve at least 1,500 units. It's just under that, but 1,500 units based on our 43-acre minimum that they're requiring of us. And now when we look for this form of housing, we realize that we need to spread the geography further to get the density. Really, we need between 100 and 200 acres alone just to get the density needed to comply with the state and the unit capacity. But as we increase our own acreage, the unit capacity starts to jump up based on how the state runs it. So that under our proposed 350 acres or so, the unit capacity shows at about 5,000 units. But in reality, we know that that's not what can be built on every lot because the state's looking at it from a district acreage total wide and not what's actually buildable on each lot. It comes back to like the zoning may allow up to 4 units on a lot, but that doesn't mean it's actually buildable. So that's what we're playing with here, and we wanted to start to provide a metric that maybe could be closer to a real build out of this zone. So we've gone through our single family permitting history dating back to the year 2000, and we've looked at some of our multifamily development history, both in 40R and some other areas. What we saw was that on average per decade, we're seeing about 144 parcels in single family zoning being redeveloped, either tear down and rebuilt or new lots based on subdivisions. It's about 144 a year, which is really just 2% of our single family lots across town per decade. And when we looked at 40R, we have 9 projects that have been approved out of 130 lots. It's closer to 7% parcel redevelopment rate. That was over 15 years, not a single decade, but pretty close. And then we compared it to some publicly available permitting data across the country that we could find specifically in Portland, Oregon. We found one that was a good data example, and they saw a 0.15% parcel redevelopment rate over the first year of their multifamily zoning changes, suggesting a 1.5 parcel redevelopment rate over a decade, which was pretty similar to us at 1.9%. But we know with the 7% of multifamily that people are used to redevelopment rate, we started to project it more closely to our parcels and acreage that we're proposing for. So, right, we have that total acreage. Within that acreage, there's about 800 parcels just under that. If you go based on permitting average, you're looking at 20 lots for redevelopment a year. And then we times that by 5 units because our median lot size is 9,500 square feet. We want to scale towards the upper end of that, so we've used that 5 units that is by right at the 22 units per acre for our median size lot. So if you start to project just under 2% based on our historic averages, you're looking at less than 20 parcels redeveloped per year and just under 90 units. If you start to skew closer to the 40R rate, where maybe development could be more enticing here in this zone, 5% of lots, you're looking at just under 50 parcels redeveloped over a decade and just over 200 units. If you take an aggressive approach that development is really going to take off in the decade and say 10% of these parcels get redeveloped, you're looking at just under 100 lots and just under 500 units. So for us, for over the course of a decade, we're looking between 100 to 500 units to be built, not the 5,000 unit capacity that the state number spits out there and everybody gets a bit freaked out by. So
there's no requirements, you don't have to.
You don't have to build anything.
You just have to zone to do that.
Nope. We just wanted to provide some context because we know that 5,000 people start to get worried.
Right, because if the only number you have to say is 5,000, right, like.
Right, and that's half of Reading's housing stock now, and so.
Do we see that, I mean, it's really market driven. And, you know, I was, for Lions, we were delivering wreaths last Saturday, or Saturdays ago. So I'm driving around towns, and I was amazed at how many tear downs with new houses were going up, and these houses are selling for, you know, $1.5 to $2 million. So you've got, like in my neighborhood, little capes, and then all of a sudden you've got this McMansion going up between them. And I'm just wondering if that's the kind of redevelopment that's going to continue, or are you guys going to go, well, let's put in a triplex here instead? It doesn't seem like the market is there for that, maybe in that district.
My take is that, right, because remember, we're not on an island, right? That all of Eastern Massachusetts is going through the same thing at, you know, different design concepts, right? But pretty much all but 2 towns or 3 towns are going through the same thing. And so, right, I think the development community is going to respond differently than what we've seen before. Because right now, right, there isn't a market I mean, the market is what you're talking about, right? And if there's a number of communities that are doing what we're doing, then there's gonna be a number of builders that say, oh, I can actually make some money doing this. Because right now you can't, right?
Homeowners who are looking
or owners that are looking to cash out.
So it's hard to like assume where the state building code would go, right? Like 3 units right now, I believe triggers sprinklers, and it's just not efficient for builds of like that we see for single family. And so if those items start to change and maybe some of these builds become more commonplace and you see codes start to change and things like that, hopefully that helps promote a market for smaller builds and smaller infill 2, 3, 4 unit structures. But it's hard to say right now. A lot of this, right, there's a lot we don't control, taxes, bonds, things, interest rates, things like that. So it changes every year, every decade, so it's hard to project a specific, but we hope that this added some context to actual unit build out.
The goal, right, I mean, a good outcome would be that the middle number that we have there, and there's supportable.
Infrastructure.
Yeah,
and so per decade, we typically average between 400 to 700 units anyway, right now, it's been some historical trends.
That's good to know.
Yep. So this, again, being a smaller zone would fall somewhere right in the middle of that, and then you add in whatever other development we have across town, and if we do other zoning changes and things, you carefully monitor those things and consider them, but right now in front of us, this zone could help us keep on pace with that trend of development. If you have questions on this, I'm happy to. We kind of want this to help support and anchor and ground our zoning district, so it's important, this piece to us. But anyways, on top of that, let's jump into the map and those uses, because a lot of our questions, and this was a wetland map, but we can use it for now, where do you agree with some of the public comment we've gotten, and we've gotten it both ways, that it's too small, it's just right, or it's too big? I guess, what are some of your initial feelings, and are there areas that you would think could be left out, if any?
Can I, one comment first, just on the map. And I know, right, GIS, they like to have certain colors. The green of the open space is way too close to the blue of that, like sitting back here. I mean, I can make them out. I know probably a lot of people won't be able to, and I think that's important, right? Having that contrast and being able to see where those green open space or public.
We can darken those up.
Yeah.
Or make them clear, like.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I could do that.
Not color them.
Yeah, that's actually even better, probably
That's
even better.
probably even better, and leave them pink, with the label.
No, not leave them pink, leave them with the, is there an air?
I can do a white or like an aerial.
The
or
aerial,
something.
yeah.
Oh, just like your wetlands.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just like your wetlands,
Yeah. Okay.
What's the thought with these areas in here? Are they just land?
So those lots specifically are predominantly business A, and we didn't want to split zone them with the new zone out of development considerations, and that we would prefer to reevaluate business A in the very short term in terms of like its boundaries, because of so many split zone lots down business A, that we could hopefully fill in towards the blue line, if found appropriate during any public comment and Cpdc process, start to unsplit some of these lots.
Yeah, right, and we had that conversation. I do, Mark, if we were to rezone those to the multifamily, it would just be sort of a mess to undo it.
Yeah.
And that was a horrible idea that someone had some, 50 years ago about those split zone lots, and we need to undo that.
Yeah.
And what we had talked about, Mark, was that that's a different discussion, and we don't want to try and lump that into this discussion.
Right.
But I think we should be upfront.
Yeah.
Is we can't leave it like that. We need to leave it like that, but we're gonna come back, next year to address that, and don't know what the answer is, but we know that it shouldn't stay the way it is.
Yeah. And because the single family split zone does give some, business A does allow multifamily by right, I believe. So the single family splits still offer protections in terms of not extending multifamily under current zoning further back, and maybe that's desirable, we just don't know yet until we do that separate process. So we didn't want to allow a multifamily zone and business A that allows multifamily and potentially lose commercial development through it. So that's a lot of context anyways with business A and things getting into the weeds, but all of that TBD.
Well, the big issue is I see, I mentioned this, Andrew, is the historic district. And I will tell you what I would prefer to see. I prefer to see a separate district for it. I have no problem in the historic district if there's 3 units per lot as of right. And provided further that it complies with all the architectural designs of the historic district and that it complements the building that is there.
Yeah.
Anything over that, I would prefer that it come back to us.
So on the historic district, we've left out our 2 local districts, which is Summer Ave here and West Street here, I think, West Street Historic District. This blue here is the National Woburn Street Historic District. It's actually not controlled locally, nor is there really any regulation for it.
There's some multi-unit.
There's multi-unit there. The forms are pretty substantially similar, so we felt that Woburn Street being an appropriate corridor was one that we could include. We've gotten varied comments that some people feel it's more equitable to include the historic districts. Some people feel they deserve to be protected or discussed at a later date and perhaps other control elements to them. So we thought it was best to right now push our local districts aside, focus on what is in proximity to our criteria for this zone, and Woburn Street meets that, and that with their existing forms felt appropriate to include.
So you're including Woburn Street as though it's within the half-mile circle?
Correct, at least up.
Oh, okay, so Woburn Street, and you're also including, are you separating Woburn Street from Summer?
Yep, so
Okay.
Summer Ave is included for this portion on both sides, but the historic district is not. And importantly, any house that's on the historical inventory still is subject to a 6-month demo delay. If it were proposed to be demolished, if it's within the historic district, which none of our zone is, it's still subject to any requirements that district has. And so we're going back to meet with historic district to better understand Woburn Street, because even they're like, you don't, have any control over it. And so we're trying to better understand that, and then also where they feel improvements to their regulations could be made to offer protection, but importantly, they should be considered still.
Are the properties within the Woburn Street Historic District on the
Local inventory.
the local inventory?
Maybe,
maybe not.
I think
maybe a couple.
there's a
or-
lot of confusion, and even I feel like we don't have an accurate list at this time, so we're trying to correct that, and this is a good time to do that. But I can cross-reference that. I do believe there are at least a handful on the local inventory. But I don't know
What's the
about all.
definition, 100 years old? Is there a definition for historic?
No, I think it's pretty subjective, so when I question that too, I say, well,
If it's 100 years old, like this entire,
Yeah.
right, this entire thing
Right.
would be historic.
Yeah, so like that, I'm very familiar with that West Street Historic District, and there's some new houses there.
Yeah, I agree.
So
So,
I think it's that we had a former select woman who wanted to make it a historic district.
yeah, I mean, if they can convert to single family and new
Oh,
single family development style, then the similar could be done for this smaller infill unit without substantially taking away from them, is how I feel, but
so I heard what you said, but say it in my language. You're proposing not to create a separate district, is that what you're saying?
I mean, usually the historic, when you look at a lot of different towns, the historic is an overlay because it's
Right.
gonna.
But what's it going to be in terms of as of right? Could somebody take a 1 acre lot and put in 20 units? I don't want
Where?
that happening
Let's start with where.
in the historic district.
Okay,
No.
so
No, because it's not included.
There's,
That's not-
well,
No, forget that. That doesn't count.
No.
That-
no, yes.
Yes, no, okay, I got you. No,
Yes.
right now, right, there's no, I think, right, it's important to understand,
Right.
there are no local regulations around the historic district that,
Yes,
that-
historic district.
yes, that Tony's pointing to. Right.
Not only that, but a lot of them already are multifamily units.
Yeah,
So
and
that's
I'm not
what-
saying, I'm not saying no to it.
Yeah.
Because I agree with Mary that in some cases, they may need to be multifamily in order to survive.
Mhm.
Because no one could, I think I saw a town recently that it would cost them $1 million to renovate it if, if they had to.
Right,
So
that wasn't there,
that's-
that was the issue about the one of the ones on Summer Street,
Yeah.
right? It said the owner couldn't afford to keep it. Yeah.
But isn't part of the there's zoning, there is like a rule if it's like a certain number of rooms older than 1940,
Yeah.
you can
You can convert
you
to a
can convert it by
two-family
to
and,
multifamily by right.
which is what a lot of Salem Street does, and all those two families are on footnote 2.
So Tony, why on Summer Street would somebody not
Last town meeting.
Yeah.
build 20 units?
They're
What-
still
what's the-
single family zone.
They're still single family zone, you're pulling them out of
Yeah.
the.
So this,
Oh, okay, so you're pulling them out, okay, but you're keeping Woburn Street in.
Yeah, so
Gotcha.
which is not a local district.
exactly, so the local districts are not included, only the national registered district, which is not local.
Okay.
As
I do-
So we'll get some comments from the public on that.
We're ready for that, we're prepared.
And hypothetically, what if you were to do something to Woburn Street and you pulled it out in some way? Treated it the same as you treated Summer Street.
I mean, we can cut it out.
Does it destroy any of your 15 units and stuff?
No, but I think part of the whole process was to make those conform easier.
Right.
Like because they're already multifamily, like there's apartments in most of those historic homes already. So they're trying to take what is a multifamily and put it in a multifamily zone. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, but do we want one of those? I mean, there's some lovely houses on that street. And do we want somebody to either tear it down or have 20 units?
So I'm just gonna step back.
Okay.
If you want me to pull some lot sizes for Woburn Street, I can probably do it in 2 seconds, but they're most definitely not getting to 20 units based on the density allowances. You're looking again, probably in the range of 1 to 5 units.
Okay, that's helpful. Okay, that's helpful. And would the construction have to be, I mean, if it looks old and it looks historic and stuff like that, would the construction have to be?
So we're working
Is that
to
where we
start
don't
the,
have regulations?
we're working to start the pattern book with Innis Design and some design forms to unit structures or potentially lot sizes, and I'm sure that it will come up that historic structures maybe have extra elements that should be considered in terms of design if they are proposed for redevelopment or reconfiguration, that there'll be some language within the pattern book on that, but I don't wanna go too far without really better understanding it yet.
But the
I think that would make it
right,
more
the pattern
saleable.
book is a suggestion,
Right.
right? And so when people are doing stuff by right, like,
If there
I
are
mean,
3 units and above, we look at them. That's what.
As of now, yes.
Right. So,
Well,
There's a number
as a,
I feel like you're very fixated on the historic district.
well,
I just wanna say there's a number of this area is quite frankly like littered with historic properties. So that are actually on Reading's local historic register.
okay.
So like the discussions with them are partially about the district, but also their concerns are more broadly with the historic mission.
properties, yeah.
Yeah, more broadly about all the properties.
Okay.
And
Okay, that
is
helps me
there-
understand it better.
In Reading, I I haven't done work in Reading. So, but in like Cambridge, if it's built before 1940, you have a 6-month wait to like have it go through the historic.
And that's if it's a
review.
full demolition application.
If it's on the list.
If it's on the list.
But if it's like whatever house.
Yeah, I think what's got me hung up is that I see these signs in the historic district.
Just clarifying.
But I don't see a lot of houses with built in 1652 or something like that. Don't see a lot of that stuff at all. Okay,
Yeah,
I
I think in the last
follow what
count,
you're doing.
there was like 100 historic properties in our district. We're not showing the map because we're still working with them because we don't believe their list is accurate. So we're hesitant to talk about it publicly without knowing the accuracy of it.
So there's historic structures not within the historic district.
Correct.
On all over.
Yeah.
Okay, that helps me understand.
And so when we talk about like equitable zoning, you know, we can't forever exclude historic districts to a degree. So sooner or later, conversations happen, and we felt that Woburn Street was appropriate at this time to consider.
It has really good walk scores too. It's a straight shot.
Yeah, I mean,
So
you are
downtown.
right, it is to the train station. Can't disagree with that. I could run over by the train, but
Or can't drive down it because of the gas company.
So.
You can tell as a public works guy that really bothered me all summer long.
So I like the extent of where you drew the map and sort of, you know, looking at all the lines. I might change a line here or there, but I couldn't like say, no, this is right, I do it.
You don't mind us including some of these north of Middlesex, there's still straight shots right down to the train station.
No, I think
before
that's,
they're there, so.
I think that's appropriate. That is a straight shot.
These John Street lots are wonky, they're wet back here, they're long, so it looks wonky, but John Street felt important to us too. It's a good
the one that looks like the outlier is the S15 in pink, it's in the cul-de-sac. Right next to
This
the
guy.
But you've got that because that's on a
That's
cul-de-sac and there's no direct
Yeah, it's like
way to
hard to
get
get
there.
there.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
from that cul-de-sac south, it's all like 60s split levels.
Yeah.
So from that cul-de-sac and everything that's S15, that's all kind of a neighborhood that has a completely different vibe
Right.
from the rest of it. We kind of drove around and we said, well, if there are houses on the street that have a real third floor with windows, then conceivably to have a new building put in that has 3 floors wouldn't be like a huge shock. And then when you get that far into the area by Pineville, you're dealing with an area where all the houses are the same and there's nothing with the third story. And as you also pointed out, from that cul-de-sac, it's essentially the same walk time as if you are like down on Summer Ave.
Right.
Because you have to go out and around.
Right.
The reality is that there's a cut through there.
Yeah, you cut through.
Yeah, Washington Park and get over, and it's a pretty short walk, but
If
But-
you,
if it's not in the winter, right? Because if it's in the winter, then you're.
It does.
No.
we have to imagine everyone's taking the sidewalks.
Yeah, no, and when I first looked at it,
But
I
I
could see exactly,
you know,
I could see exactly why you do it.
I saw that and I completely agreed, like, I know what that neighborhood looks like, I'm like, yeah, you can't, that would not be, that wouldn't work.
So until some of the forms start to change naturally over time, single family or other, then.
Yes, yeah,
discuss,
yeah.
But
And the other area where you probably could extend it, but it gets a little bit far, is that Deering, Cape Cod, Harriman,
Yep,
up to
yeah.
Lowell
yeah.
Street. I'm not that familiar with that.
They were pretty similar to Riverside, they're quite small.
The Cape Cod is
Literally
small.
Cape Cod.
Yeah, are literally like Cape Cod.
Yeah.
You know, Deering probably could
Mhm.
handle it, and it would be appropriate. But it's that like,
Right.
where do you draw that line? And that's where I could see,
Connect here.
that's exactly the area that I was like, oh, maybe I would have drawn it along Deering. I get why not not Cape Cod. And then the other place, what's the name of that? To the furthest one to the west, where the boundary is down the street. I forget what the name of that street is.
Mineral Street.
No, the next one down, the next one over.
Prospect, down Prospect,
No, north of the tracks.
north of the tracks.
What's it, Woodward?
Woodward, yeah.
Yeah.
Woodward.
Right, where you have, both sides of the street are really the same.
Yep.
The same form, and you're doing it down the street, but then if you do it on one side, then it's like, what do you do for Vale?
Ready for bed.
Right, you start to like
Yeah.
bounce out, so I get that.
Well,
And those lots are actually bigger on the one side.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
here's my thinking from a persuasive type argument, not necessarily to make sense, but I think there's a general thought, if a community gets overly hit, that CPDC might pull that community out of this district at some point in time.
That would be very difficult.
No, I don't know about that.
but what's,
Well, so
But like
long
if
as
a
you, so long
neighborhood
as you
starts
maintain.
but that,
Just like
but that
Salem.
makes it feel negative.
Right.
This isn't
Well,
negative,
Well,
right?
And if Salem Street, which has a series of twos down it now, why would we pull that out? It starts to
Yeah.
match and so I get what you're saying in terms of like, are there overly hit areas that maybe we have to keep an eye on for infrastructure or impact to that specific geography, but I do think that pulling it out would be a tougher consideration.
Well, let me just go on with what I was saying.
Yeah.
The first question is, if we felt that a community was overly hit, we would remove it. The first question is, does the rest of the community that is there still meet the state standards? And if it doesn't, I'd use the rest of the pink to draw in. Because one of the complaints we've got is, you're using the entire circle. You know, you're capturing 5,000 units, as you and I were talking here, Andrew. But yet, you only really need 1,500 units,
Right.
whatever. But I mean, that was my thinking overall, to basically say, if any neighborhood gets swamped, they might be pulled out.
I guess that,
or-
yeah, sort of thinking that through, right?
Yeah.
10 years down the road, right, you have 3/4 of your neighborhood as now multifamily. Okay, 3/4 of my neighborhood's multifamily. I may need to address, street parking or,
Okay.
that sort of
Another
thing,
way
but
of looking at
like, then my neighborhood's sort of converted, why would I then take it out of multifamily, have all these, non-conforming lots?
In writing.
Yeah, so, I mean, we may have to address some of those, externalities that come with the added density, but.
Yeah, I think street parking, kind of just as you mentioned, it is gonna be a conversation and it's one that we're still trying to better understand how we talk about it. It's like
Yeah.
single family can park on the street now with guests and others, and I don't see why it's different for 2 or 3 or 4 units, but it feels like a tough conversation, right?
Yeah, I think it's different, and I think in the future, right, there will need to be more
I think we need a
management
better
of it,
plan of.
right, but like, look around Eastern Massachusetts, like, right, it happens in every community, like, it's parking is managed a little bit more intensively than we do in Reading.
Right.
Well, I suppose the only point I would make, and I can say this because my daughter's in Somerville. I think you
Well,
are too.
so let's not jump in
I don't
Somerville,
want
we
it
are
to be
not,
Somerville.
we're not gonna go there.
That I'm opposed to.
Yeah, we are not headed there.
I think this gives us a level of confidence. We are pretty confident in this map, but we've just been trying to, and we'll kind of step back to give it more support. And so if you guys feel that it feels pretty strong or close, yeah, it's still subject to change during public hearing and things like that. Certainly room for amendment, but
Yeah, there's an increasing number of people calling for it to be the minimum size.
yeah.
And do you have one that would be, if you redrew this as a minimum size?
Is that, sorry,
I know that
We have
based on,
areas we could take out pretty
Yeah.
easily.
and on past geographies and tests that we've run, I know that, yeah, I could probably get something.
I just wonder if that's a tool that we wanna have.
It just gets tougher in terms of like, if you try to meet minimums, I could look at, call these quadrants, 1, 2, 3, 4. I could look at one quadrant alone and do that and find compliance. But why are we not
Yeah.
supporting all the edges? And if you try to support all the edges in minimum requirements, you're looking at like a block of across.
But you know that
from-
there's gonna be people at town meeting that are
Yep.
gonna say, that's, why don't we just do that?
Yeah.
And then it's
So-
gonna
I think,
spiral
and we'll
down.
step back to our goals in a minute.
Right, I would be cautious, and I don't know who you're hearing that from, right? But I guess I would be cautious, I would make sure that it's not the people, right? If it's people calling you up, that's not a good cross-section, right? Because the people that, at least in the meetings that I were at, like, there's a good chance that the people that aren't picking up the phone, that either don't feel empowered to pick up the phone or aren't busy, have other stuff going on, they're not picking up the phone and worrying about this map, right? Versus, right, and so you might not be getting a good cross-section.
Yeah, and there's a lot of context to the proposal that I feel sometimes gets missing when people just look at the map or the law and say, let's do the minimum, and they don't fully understand like the concept of the zoning yet, so we're working to try to help spread the word, I guess, more on like a holistic idea of what the zone is, so.
Yeah, and I mean, the presentations, the way they started, were
Yeah.
so clear and concise to the people who were there. Like, it made sense, so like, I mean,
The
we're going
feedback,
through the
yeah,
whole
yes.
hearings, but even when we get to town meeting, we'll need that again.
Yeah, and I mean,
Probably more so.
Yeah.
and when we look at some of the permitting projection too, we feel that it's digestible and manageable, and like to some degree, you need to experience some element of change here so that we can start to get an eye on if there's a positive impact to the market, whether the impact to the town. If we try to do lesser, we're just gonna set ourselves further behind and have to do this in the future. We kind of look at it like downtown smart growth, right? We adopted it in 2008 and we got one project, and it wasn't until 10 years where we expanded it and got good development out of it. And to try to wait 10 years again to take this next step, I'm never gonna get this chance to like have this discussion again right now. So we have a lot of broader goals in terms of housing that we feel that this achieves as well. In 2006 master plan, in all of our housing production plans, everything has been directed to like promote diversity in housing types and neighborhood form and preservation. And we feel that this proposal keeps the intent of those goals and meets them. So for a decade plus, this is what we've been working towards, and kind of been on the end of single family and denser multifamily, and now we're really looking at that diversity here in this one. So we hope by stepping back to these goals, we can kind of re-step and say, this is what we're trying to achieve. So in terms of affordable units too, I'm just gonna quickly mention it because in our zoning language, now that we've pivoted to the density per lot, we feel that there is room to have affordable unit requirements, and we all briefly chatted about this last time. Right now, we're looking to trigger a 10% affordable unit requirement on projects of 10 units or more, which equates to, I believe, about a 17,000 square foot lot size or higher, 20,000 square foot lot size or higher. The reason we chose 10, we really wanted 8 because that was a 15,000 square foot lot size and 15% of our lots and single family zoning matching and trying to give protection of larger lots. The way the law is structured is that we can't require more than 10% of units. And so if we say 10% on 8 units, and then you have to round up, it's really 12.5% requirement in essence. 1 out of 8 units is 12.5%, and the state would say that's a non-compliant affordability component because you can't do more than 10%. And that can happen on a 17-unit structure in the same manner where it's kind of comes back down to that same math, whereas you start to round up, you start getting over 10%. Now, the work around that potentially that we're trying to explore right now is we just round down. Does that get us units? But still 1 out of every 8 is still over 10%, so it doesn't really work, at least off the top. So we've kind of hit this 10-unit threshold to trigger them at 80% AMI to meet the state requirements. There is potential that, like, if we really wanted to exceed that in terms of by right and required use of inclusionary, that we would have to run an economic impact analysis on projects. And it's quite a lengthy process for us to try to get through at this point for our proposal. Not that we can't consider it, it would just be tough to squeeze it in. So rather than try to do that, we thought that to provide incentive for additional affordability, we could look at potentially laxing dimensional controls. So these wouldn't be required, but they could be incentivized, which kind of works around the state language a bit. So that if you provided 15% of dwelling units instead of 10% of your units, you could increase from 30% to 50% lot coverage, or some example of that. We don't really want to propose at this time a height increase, a density increase, setback, or parking relief. It kind of came down to lot coverage by itself. So we felt 50% maybe could help incentivize it and promote it to a developer. And similar, if they did 50% AMI units, they could get up to 50% lot coverage. I don't know if that's a viable number, if it's viable for development, if it's viable for the community, but those are just some ideas we've been conceptually thinking of, so, and would like to include, but.
Can I suggest some maybe different numbers?
Sure.
What if you said instead of 50% for the first bullet there, you said 40? And then for the second bullet, you said 20% dwelling units. If there's a mixture of 50, under 50 and under 80. Just, the only reason I have some difficulty, I was gonna move the 10% up. It's right at the top of the page, but I know what you're saying now with the state requiring the 10%, but that just keeps us even.
Right.
And that's not likely to get us anywhere.
Yeah,
I just don't see a lot of these places as going affordable.
I agree. I mean, with the not a lot of lot sizes being able, not a lot of lots that trigger some of these unit counts, it's more trying to say, like, if they were redeveloped, can we get additional benefit out of it? And we could play pushing some of these numbers up or down. We just also wanted them to try to be somewhat viable for development, because affordability can impact the cost of a project and financial feasibility. So
I'll leave it up to the contractor.
It's hard to find the right
I'll leave it up
numbers.
to the contractors here, but my rule of thumb is that to the affordable units, the land is free and the construction is at cost. Is that the general rule of thumb around here? As the way the contractors look at it. The land is free to the buyer of the affordable unit. Buyer of the affordable unit pays generally the construction costs.
I don't know about the land, it's free because
Well,
every unit you're taking out of my pocket.
Well, what you're getting at the 10 up there, let's say there's 10 lots that are developed. You're getting 8 people that are paying for the lot.
Yeah.
The 2 that are affordable are free. They're not paying any real estate cost.
I don't know about those numbers. I've been
Yeah.
trying to chat on projects of this scale.
Well,
I don't know a lot of development.
Well, the other angle, I mean, I could go different. I could take the first bullet alone that you've got there. I don't know whether we need to go to 50 or whether you could go to 40. Or I could take both bullets and maybe try to go up to 20 with the second one and go to 50%. But in the second one, it would be a combination of 50, under 50% and under 80%, but without specifying, just said to be a mixture.
Yeah, I think when we've seen 50% AMI, it's typically 15% of total units or less.
Right, I mean, they could be,
Right.
it's under 8.
I haven't seen a project here that's, or around, that's not a mix of incomes unless you're talking real dense housing and public housing. But certainly, again, this is all up for discussion and we just wanted to kind of throw.
I sort of have a messaging concern about this, right? I mean, I full on, right, like, we need to figure out a way, right, to improve, increase affordable housing. But, right, the message that I'm hearing around this whole proposal is we want to keep the neighborhoods the same, right? Sort of the feel of the neighborhood's the same. We're trying to just tweak around the edges to get some of the existing building forms to be, right, to be consistent with zoning, and therefore it's, you know, by right, and you know, things aren't gonna change dramatically, but then we go, but you know, if your neighbor comes in and provides some affordable units, then they can build something that's more dense. So, right, I have this, I have like this messaging.
It's not more dense, it's just larger.
Because these units
All
on
right.
these lots are
Yes, larger,
Just clarify that.
but yes, good, yeah, I take your point, but okay, then they get to build larger, right? Same story there. Especially if we are not all that sure that there's gonna be all that many parcels that would really be able to take use of this. I think that, I mean, right, certainly there's a big push for affordable housing in town, but I think there's also gonna be a big push against doing this. And this sort of, I don't know, when I read this as like, yeah, they're saying it's not gonna change, but then look at this, right? Like, look at this, they're opening the door to something that's larger.
So you're generally in favor of dropping the last 2 bullets?
Yeah, well, I unfortunately, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think that the message isn't the same as the message that you've been carrying the whole time.
If you lowered the lot coverage to 40%, does it feel any different to you?
It's the same message. It's the same message of, we're gonna give a bonus if it's affordable, and that bonus means more development possible to my neighbor.
Right. How about this? And I think that there are a lot of people here that would be willing to expand to 1 additional unit, maybe 2 additional units. I think there's a lot of, if you get the in-law, I'm coming back to the in-law apartment that we haven't changed. And somehow I'd like to see regulations on that in here, because I think there are a lot of families, maybe have seniors that are on social security.
But we
legally
can't.
restricted.
So ADUs just are a separate discussion.
Well, it's a separate discussion, but I'd like to see it, it doesn't mean we can't handle it in tandem.
But they're already handled.
They already exist in our.
Well,
Under this, if you have a house and it fits in whatever, it's 5,000 square feet, 60 foot, and you can fit it within the 30%, which is now a 5% increase. So if you had a 10,000 square foot lot, that's, you know, another 500 square feet. But you don't have to put up 4 units. You could put up 2 units, which means that you could build your in-law automatically. Done.
Yeah.
Without any of the extra rules for ADUs.
Right. The ADU really is now towards the rest of S15 and S20 and how we can correct it and simplify it.
Yeah.
And I mean, even with a lot of the lots, I know as you're getting out toward Woodward, because that's over where I live, it's like not a lot of those lots are conforming. I mean, if you did all the setbacks, you wouldn't be able to fit.
Right. So I hear your point on the marketing. For us, it was more of an intent to try to get above the minimum SHI requirements and if there's
Yeah, and it's
potential
gonna
for
come
it.
back, I
Yeah.
bet it's gonna come back in the discussions.
Mhm.
So I mean, maybe to what you're saying is like, keep it in your pocket, but like, maybe don't blast it
Yeah.
out there until it starts to become, because it's gonna become part of the discussion in the
Right.
end anyway. So like, the fact that you've thought about it is good, but maybe not presenting it right at the
Mhm.
beginning.
I mean, if people wanna argue about and take out a piece that impacts nothing about our compliance, I'm fine with that. Like,
Yeah, but that argument's gonna take 3.5 hours.
Right.
so the reason why it's included, why we've added this, right, is in direct response to repeated feedback we have received in every single public event we've held. And then additionally, that as far as we're aware, no one who has passed MBTA related zonings thus far has passed it without affordable housing.
Right.
In that it becomes, and it has been argued that it is essential for it to pass town meeting, right? The problem for us is that the inclusionary aspect of it hits at such a high unit count that it's essentially irrelevant to our district, right? There's so few lots where you're gonna get to 10.
Yeah.
So the only way that we can have it in any usable sense is doing it as an incentive base. And the only incentive we have is lot coverage. So it's like, we can take it out and just say, sorry, we're not doing this, but we've had multiple people bring up, well, you're adding units to the denominator of our SHI and not adding to the top.
Right.
It's true.
Here's my comment. But here's the kicker.
Yeah.
If I'm doing 4 units and I make one of them affordable,
You're not gonna.
well, I just hit 40B. All the rules go away. 25% of your units need to be affordable for 40B. So if I have a 4-unit development, I make one of them affordable, I qualify for 40B and I don't even have to worry about lot coverage, setbacks, or anything else.
Right, but us being over 10% and having a certified plan is what stops that. And there's also like, I
Right, but the problem is
somehow
you-
know 4
going
units
lower.
is an achievable 40B based on like their income or profit limits and things like that, but I don't know. I just,
Right, that, I guess, how many 4-unit developments do you see with one?
Right.
What, it's not,
I don't see
that's
40
not
Bs
feasible, it's
as
not a
that.
feasible option,
It's not, yeah,
right?
6, 7, 8 units.
yeah. I
Around
think
that, we might see people start to pick it up.
in the Portland thing we looked at, I think the affordable units triggered at 6 or 8 and it hasn't been used at all.
Right, like just to do 1 or 2
Mhm.
units affordable, deed restricted, like the math doesn't work to do.
If I'm the developer, if I wanted to build 5 and now I have to put in 1 unit that's gonna be affordable, I'm gonna build 4.
Right, yeah,
That's,
I'm gonna make them larger units until I sell them for more money.
yeah.
I mean, if you wanted to, what I had proposed in my original was that there'd be a sort of community CPA fee for these. That I don't think we can do.
we've explored development fees, they're not quite there yet in Massachusetts. I've tried to see if we can make the push for that. I think the best I can try to do is in lieu payment for street trees if they're not feasible.
You know, and I disagree with that. I don't think the law has been clarified on that, so it's just someone sticking their neck out and saying, we're gonna do this.
Yeah,
And see where it
pretty much,
goes.
yeah.
But I don't think we have that opportunity, to
Right.
have a big enough project. that
I'm sticking
we
my
can
neck
do
out
that.
far enough on this one, huh?
Yeah, no, I agree, but I think that there's some things that you could put together that would do
Mhm.
that. For instance,
Agreed.
you know, a lot of communities, instead of saying, you know, you're gonna repave that
Right.
road that you dig up to put in your gas main, you're gonna give us X amount of money per
Mhm.
square foot.
Mhm.
So there's ways you can build that in,
Right.
and you're not really getting a so-called development fee, you're getting some
Right,
costs for infrastructure, that gives you
Yep.
flexibility to do
Yep.
stuff
I agree.
elsewhere.
I would love to
But
consider.
it's a big project
Yeah.
to bite off, so, you know, continue.
Yeah, I would love to explore further one day soon, but right now, yeah.
And it takes some some courage to
Yep,
do
some
something like
guts,
that,
yeah.
because you are gonna get pushback.
Yep.
And then you're gonna get, town officials
Someone's
who say,
gonna-
eh,
yeah.
we don't think that one.
Yep, or somebody's
So-
gonna appeal something,
Yeah.
and so, yep. I think that was all of our questions. Did I forget one on the map? I don't think so.
All right, I got a couple of comments.
Sure.
Comment number one, I guess I'll see you again on Wednesday because there's a precinct 2 meeting about this, at the
There
library.
is, so that specific precinct or some neighbors there have just been reaching out to us, and so we wanted to reach directly to them and hold a meeting. And now we're gonna offer it for many precincts, and then town meeting wide, pre-town meetings, so,
You got the town meeting member email?
Yes,
good, trying. Yeah.
which means if 3 other members of the board wanted to show up to this meeting, no, 2 other, you couldn't because then it would be an official meeting
Right.
potentially.
Yep.
So I'm gonna try and make it, just letting people know. I'm assuming
Good.
parks are excluded from your zoning calculation
Correct.
total? Okay, perfect. Has anybody discussed our limitation on driveways? Which is a major,
You mean the no inside yards?
oh, I was talking about just one driveway per lot.
We're starting to have those conversations because we want to better understand how we could potentially, so there's in zoning, for some reason, it says no driveway shall ever be allowed in a side yard setback. That's crazy. But every driveway is in a side yard setback, so that's one we're trying to remove. And then the dual driveway or shared driveway is something we're trying to open the conversations to now. And I think the multiple structures on a lot will probably garner some conversation with you guys that we'd like to have in the future and at the public hearings, to better understand how we tackle what could be multiple structures on a lot. So.
And I assume going to what you said, Tony, parking has to be on a parking surface of some kind and not on grass.
I don't know if that's a rule. Mostly it deals with the general bylaw, it's number of curb cuts.
They have to be like
Is that the bylaw or the subdivision?
I
It's
believe that's.
driveway regulations,
Driveway,
engineering, yeah.
Yeah, so that's not in the, it's not in a bylaw.
No.
Because when I redid the, what was the driveway or road, it was the driveway regulations. I just did them and went to the selectmen and they approved it.
That's pretty much what we're doing.
So it's not a heavy lift to do.
Yeah, I think we can tackle that with engineering and select board.
The issue we had in the air was with shared driveways.
Yeah.
Because they allowed this open space incentive, so now you had a shared driveway with a house behind a house. And so now you've got these weird neighborhoods that
Right.
don't have frontage for half of the houses.
Yeah, that's exactly what we wanna try to better understand, because we were thinking like, oh, a rear structure might be nice. And this is just one example we found, 22 and 24 Elliott. And is this what we're looking for?
We're not seeing
They have a
really-
shared driveway here and then a second driveway for this lot. Oh. It's.
Yeah, the people that we've talked to also are excited about the zoning, and a lot of people have all said, we wanna put another house in the back.
So this is 22 Elliott, this is 24 shared or east driveway to get to this one, and then a second. But is this the form we're looking for? Are we looking for this? We've heard from some residents that this is what they wanna do, but in general, in terms of our zone and housing, it's kind of similar to a detached ADU, but that's a principal structure and it's got no frontage, and so for me, I certainly, unless it's courtyard style, it's like a max of 2 units, something like this. And then courtyard is kind of its own beast or definition or use, but anyways, that's just food for thought, but.
But if that were one lot, would that make more sense?
In essence, it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
I mean, It's the same
Right.
form, it's the same impact, right?
That just becomes like, obviously this would still be subject to any principal structure setbacks and lot coverage in terms of the whole lot, or if you were, but like you couldn't subdivide this lot and do a structure, it would have to be one lot, because it wouldn't meet frontage like the lot next door, so it's just wonky in terms of like considering it and how it fits in zoning and does it meet, right, it doesn't meet the forms that we're looking for if we allow something like that in use design.
And that's what you promote on the size of your district, is that you're making more lots conforming.
Right.
So even if people don't take advantage of the multifamily, they don't have to go in front of the ZBA whenever they want to put on a deck.
Correct.
Yeah, like.
Yeah, that is a big, that's a huge selling
huge
point
selling
of this whole thing,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely. So that's just food for thought. Affordability is food for thought. I feel like there's one other food for thought. I guess my other food for thought would be setbacks. We got the comment that why not just have a 30-foot side yard setback total between the two sides, and then someone could do 25 feet on this side and 5 feet on the other. I don't really want to go that approach. Yeah, it adds a lot of, I guess, I like diversity in neighborhood and structure and setback, but it adds an element of like, what if two people right next door do a 5-yard setback to each other or less, and so it's just
Well, I would leave it at a 5 foot minimum.
right. Yep.
So you're still gonna have a 10-foot distance
Separation,
between
yep.
the homes, which should be sufficient. But depending upon the lot and the width and everything else, you may need that few extra feet
Exactly.
to get the cars in the back so they can park.
Exactly. So that's the only, so those are my 3 food for thoughts for you guys for public hearing. I don't know if we'll discuss this further at your next hearing. I'm guessing it's running pretty late next week, so.
So extra coffee.
Yeah. And I know it's a long December. Thank you guys for your willingness to schedule these things and be with us. It's a lot of time and a lot of Mondays, so I appreciate it. That's it. The other item we had that wasn't on the agenda was you guys in September had endorsed Grandview Road Mylars for the modification. For some reason, in one of the sets, the electric utility easement wasn't included in it, so RMLD won't install anything until this is signed and recorded, so.
Does it have to be signed by the same two people?
Yep, which I believe was Tony, Hillary, Tom.
Oh, man, you're doing a good deed.
I know, that's like 20 signatures.
So it's just one sheet that we have to
It
read.
is just one sheet, yeah.
Oh, one sheet? Oh, okay.
Other than that, I have no other. This has got, we can wait on those.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
here ready, yeah, but.
Yep. This one. You have to use a special pen. Oh, you have your own?
No, there were two. I had, she's just curious what other are
Well, I guess I have
She
my
does
own.
have some in her bag.
I
All
do
right,
have
well,
one. I
let's
did
sign
bring
that.
that one.
Anything else from anyone? Yes, no,
No.
we're good? All right,
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
all right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you guys.
Thanks.
Going later than I